Peace, peace. How's everyone doing? Peace, Rebecca. Okay, so this was something I wanted to do for a while. I wanted to basically uh, unravel a well repeated trope, and that is, you know, that the United States of America was founded on Judeo Christian principles. So we're going to basically bust that myth tonight, inshallah. And believe it or not, it really had to involve Muslims. Funny how that works, huh? It had to involve Muslims and politics for the Americans to admit to them not being a Christian nation. Okay, so what do I mean by that? We'll go into that. Make sure to hit the likes. Rebecca, Heinrich von Weaker, I've modded you. I've seen you in the chat enough times already to trust you. Alaikum assalam, Socrates. How are you, Akhi? Peace, peace, Armunn. Hang tight. I've given Armunn an invite link. I want him to hop on board. I see him in the studio. We'll also provide the invite link. I might have already done that in the chat. I mean, in the Discord. So if you want to hop on board once we're done our presentation, you are more than welcome. Okay, so before I start, how's the audio? I'm not using my brand new mic. I'm back to the old school mic. So can you inform me how the audio is like? Rebecca? Anyone? And mic check is good. Audio sounds good. Thank you. Okay, so let's start off with hearing the basic America is a Christian country narrative, as it's oft repeated, especially by conservatives and Republicans, Christian evangelicals, uh, um, also, the patriotic but also Christian crowd in the U.S. So let's have a listen.
And then you have Kamala Harris on the flip side saying you're at the wrong rally because some pro-life young students at La Crosse in Wisconsin said Christ is King, Jesus is Lord. There's a really stark contrast with the rhetoric between these two camps. And what a lot of people don't realize, and it's a really sad thing, but it's true, America is a Christian country. We were founded as a Christian nation. The founding fathers understood that our country would not be able to survive without the leadership, the guidance of Christian principles. And when you don't have Christianity, when you don't have Christian principles like respect for life, justice, well, everything that the Christian faith has provided Western civilization, you descend into tyranny. You can't have freedom without the Christian morality. And that is actually why Kamala Harris not only represents anti-Christian values, but she also represents utter despotism in a way that we've never seen in this country. The persecution of traditional Catholics, pro-lifers behind bars, the targeting of political dissidents on the right. It's all rooted in the spiritual crisis in the Democratic Party. That's a real rejection of our Christian founding.
Okay, so you will hear rhetoric like this a lot, especially when they really want to pander to their conservative and Christian voter base.
Some will say now that I am calling America a Christian nation. And so I am. Some will say that I am advocating Christian nationalism. And so I do.
So even though nationalism and Christianity, should be anathema, they're not. Here is the former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo.
We face these domestic crises here at home, which are often put to us by the media as secular crises. Remind yourself that these are all crises of faith. And if we get that piece wrong, we can't fix any of those other problems. He indeed has a plan for America, and I am confident you all, through his grace, will help execute that plan. We are not a defeated nation. We are not a nation in decline. We are not a racist nation. We are a God-blessed Christian nation. Don't let the woke socialists get you down. Keep working. Commit yourself.
So making it seem like it's a right-left thing and the socialist leftist crowd are the non-Christian crowd. Okay, so when we started, I said Muslims forced the early American republic to basically admit that they're not Christian. How did that happen? Well, there was something called the Barbary piracy, the Barbary Pirates and the Barbary War. What's the Barbary War all about? Okay, so I'm just going to give you guys a quick rundown. You can go check out, Wikipedia for this. I think Wikipedia is really good for um, covering basic historical, um, like what the mainstream narrative is for history. So let me just pull up and make sure to hit the likes, everyone, while I switch screens. I'm pulling up this Wikipedia article. It's about the Treaty of Tripoli. The Treaty of Tripoli. This was a peace treaty signed in 1796. The very first treaty between the United States and Tripoli. Tripoli is now Libya. And this was to secure commercial shipping rights and protect American ships in the Mediterranean Sea from local Barbary pirates. So, what is this piracy, Barbary pirates, all about? Okay, I'm just going to tell you the landscape of the area at that time. What it was the Mediterranean was considered a Muslim sea, and basically all shipping that traveled along the Mediterranean Sea that passed through Muslim maritime waters was subject to something called the jizya. What is the jizya? The jizya is a type of tax imposed in Sharia law, in Islamic Sharia. By the way, Sharia law uh, is redundant because Sharia means law in Arabic. So saying Sharia law is saying law or Sharia. It's like when Starbucks has that beverage and they call it chai tea. You do realize chai means tea, so you're basically just calling, you're trying to sound fancy, calling something tea when tea alone would suffice. Okay, so what was jizya? Jizya was basically a Muslim government saying that, hey, if you are a Christian commercial entity and you're passing through Muslim territory, pay us a protection tax. When you pay us this protection tax, you're secured from highway robbery, thefts, piracy, blah blah blah, right? And this was charged only to Ahlul Kitab. Ahlul Kitab are the people of the book, the Christians and the Jews, right? If you are a non-Christian or a non, you're like a Hindu or something else, you're not entitled to the jizya. Okay, so back to the Treaty of Tripoli. All the European powers at that time, just to avoid the hassle of piracy, so the Venetians, the Genoese, the Napoleonic French, they were paying jizya to the Ottomans, right? Who controlled these port cities on the North African coast, cities like Tripoli, cities like Benghazi, cities like Tunis, Algiers, Marrakesh, right? So when you are a merchant vessel from Genoa and you want to conduct trade between the east and western um, shores of the Mediterranean, you're more than likely going to pass through a Muslim controlled area. You are going to pay the jizya, right? Now, the Americans, they were paying the jizya until Thomas Jefferson. Look up this Treaty of Tripoli. You'll be amazed at how it admits to the fact that the Americans, to go about no longer paying the jizya tax, went to the Bay of Tripoli in Libya and said, hey, we're not even Christian, man. Why are you charging us jizya? That's literally what the Treaty of Tripoli was all about, right? And when the Bay in Tripoli and Tunis and these other places would not agree to that, that's what caused the Barbary War. That's what created the U.S. Marines. That's why the U.S. Marines has the hymn, from the shores of Montezuma to the something Tripoli, right? They were created because they didn't want to pay jizya to these Muslim bays in the Barbary Coast. Now, why was it called the Barbary Coast? It was called the Barbary Coast because the people naming these places had no respect for the the Ottoman realm. So they wouldn't call it the Ottoman Caliphate or anything like that. They just knew that this area was inhabited by Berbers or Berber-speaking people, even though by the 18th century, everyone, Berber or otherwise, was speaking Arabic, right, in Tripoli, in Tunis, and so on. And the beys, the bureaucracy in these cities were Turkish. They were Ottomans, right? The beys, the pashas, and so on. So they called them, the Barbary Coast, but it really had nothing to do with like Berbers were speaking Berber more in in the interior of the Sahara, but in the coast it was everything was conducted in Arabic, even by the Turkish bureaucracy. Okay, so now that I got that out of the way, I am going to play a few, and these they're licensed by Creative Commons. I think I got them from the archive.com. And while they play, let me add our good friend Armunn to the stage. Okay, so before I play that, I wanted to play a very funny. Where is it? I wanted to play a very funny video. If I could find it, here it is.
May I have some oats? No. I am starving, brother. As am I, brother. The tall, skinny figure has thrown the oats at me. Me, brother. I believe they have taken a liking to me. No, brother. I have seen this before. I have observed many things. From the roaring beast that the tall, skinny figures crawl in sight of to travel far beyond the horizon, to how the figure wept when the other had fallen into a deep sleep. And from my experiences, I have learned that they will give extra oats to one of us before taking them into the shed of no return. They will do terrible things in that shed, brother. Lies! That shed is where the chosen ones go to dine with our tall, skinny gods. You are a fool, brother, and you shall be left behind in the mud with your backwards ideas. No, brother! You must believe me. Share with me the oats, and you shall not reach the desired girth for the tall, skinny ones. They will spare your life, brother. Aha! So this was all a plan to steal my oats. You truly are despicable, brother. I will not trust your lies. Brother, when they took me outside the reaches of the pointy fences, into the roaring beast and way over the horizon, I saw it. I was taken to a gathering of these tall, skinny figures. They paraded me around, brother, and I saw the truth. I saw the tall, skinny ones consuming our flesh. I could not have been mistaken, brother. The smell of the flesh was surely one of us. They suspended the flesh above a fire and let it burn before consuming it. They did not just consume it either, brother. They took pleasure from this. Their mouths curved a wicked smile, and some even let out moans of satisfaction from consuming our flesh, brother. The figures are consumers, brother. They are no different than the furry red demon that consumed and terrorized us and the feathered ones. Your story amuses me, brother, but does not convince me. I shall have these oats myself and dine with the tall, skinny gods. I am sorry for you, brother. Your eyes cannot take the blinding light of the truth, and you scurry back to your cave. I shall take care of your spawn once they consume you, brother, as they have consumed your lover, our father, our mother, and many more.
The end. I really like that. I found it on a YouTube video. A very Neoplatonic message. Anyways, welcome aboard. Armunn is muted currently. So we're going to play our very first presentation on America's non-Christian origins. Oops, that's not it. 1 second.
Of civilization.
Here we go.
The United States was a Masonic creation designed to spread fake democracy around the world. There has never been a true democracy on Earth. In fact, all 33 signers of the Declaration of Independence were spoiled, secret society rich kids of Euro royalty who went to Harvard, Oxford, Yale, Cambridge, and other private schools, all of which have secret societies. Most famous of all are the Cap and Gown and Skull and Bones. Here are just a few you might be familiar with. John Hancock, Harvard. Samuel Adams, Harvard. Benjamin Franklin, private tutors. John Adams, Harvard. And the list of well-to-do signers goes on and on. From Yale, Princeton, Cambridge, Oxford. It's kind of funny how they never mentioned this in history class. All secret societies are offshoots of ancient Freemasonry, which is the black art of mind manipulation. This is the true meaning of the compass and square. By manipulating our innate mental archetypes with curves and angles, balance and unbalance, Freemasons control our minds through art, buildings, music, language, and toxins in our food, water, and air. Freemasonry is the cornerstone of all secret societies and is simply a massive, well-organized, clandestine.
Christopher Columbus. What a piece of work. We have a national holiday dedicated to this guy. All the history books prop him up as some kind of spectacular hero to the Native Americans.
This was the actual video.
And
Sorry about that, guys.
there's even been world fairs dedicated to his achievements. However, everywhere you look, there is controversy surrounding his achievements. He did not discover America. He was a fraud. He doesn't deserve statues or holidays in his honor. Here we have biography.com. Was Christopher Columbus a hero or a villain? And history.com. Why Columbus Day courts controversy. Now, we'll look into all that and Also, why is he holding his hand like this with the two middle fingers together, the index and the pinky separated? You'd think it's just random, the painter decided to paint it that way. But upon looking further into history and at older drawings and paintings of Tartarians, the people of Tartary, you'll find that they all, interestingly, have the same hand symbol with the two middle fingers together, the index and the pinky separated. Here we have it. Here we have it. And here we have it. So it's no coincidence that once the Tartarians had been removed from history, we find people like Christopher Columbus secretly making their hand symbol in his paintings. Here he is with his beloved globe, as his discovery proved that to be fact. And we'll even look at some older paintings, some maps that have Christopher Columbus in them. Here is a text about Christopher Columbus and a portrait of his bust, as well as you will find him over here encountering Native Americans, but also an unknown type of people who have weapons and shields, clothes, and skin color which does not resemble any of the Native Americans that he was supposed to encounter. Surprisingly enough, we'll also find information on this map about the Tartarians and how they were definitely in this area of the world at the time when Christopher Columbus came here. That's probably why you'll notice somebody like this, who you would actually expect to find existing in a city that looked more along the lines of these. But a future video is going to cover the World Columbian Exposition in Chicago, where we'll discuss the possibility that this city was not built of plaster and stucco, but it was in fact already in America when Columbus got here, and that is why they had to completely burn the whole thing to the ground and leave no trace of it, because that would in fact reveal the truth that when Christopher Columbus got to America, he encountered a people
Now, I never really
who have
deep
been
dove
completely removed from the
into
history books. But before we go in
architecture
too
of
deep to
early
what he
American
found when he
cities.
got to America, let's talk about what happened before he left Spain
Maybe Armunn would know
and
more
came
about
to
this than
America. And of course, this is going to get into a topic which is very common in conspiracy, and that is the Jews. So they were in Spain in 1491, and they were in Spain in 1492, but following the Alhambra decree in 1492, they were kicked out of Spain. So the Alhambra decree, which was issued on March 31st, 1492, kicked the Jews out of Spain. Now they were...
Armunn, I saw you unmuting your mic. If you wanted to add your insight, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Very well. Loud and clear, yes.
Excellent. Well, your question was about the buildings?
Yeah, the buildings in the United States that can really be replicated, and more or less in Europe as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, there's two types of these buildings. One type is certainly already present before, which does not imply that a civilization was active when they were found,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't mean that it wasn't either, right? But the buildings could be there with the civilization already inactive for some reason. Another type of buildings, and I've been in conversations for years now with someone from America who is professionally a builder, and he's been to some iconic buildings in his area, and he found in several of them layers, let's say, which is something that I also found here in Portugal recently when I went with Silas to visit some monuments. And in his case, what he found was that the external layer of the buildings that he looked at was very intricate and seemingly very advanced, but the
Sophisticated, yeah.
internal layer was crude and basic behind it,
Okay.
right? So it was basically a well-made facade put on top a very basic building in the cases that you looked at. Okay. This does not mean that it's a generalized thing and that all the buildings are like that, right? But what that indicates is that some of them, at least, seem to be props in the sense of put together to seem to resemble something that would be later on used in the future for some narrative
Oh, like a
proposition.
studio fake city props facade they use in their, movie sets.
Correct. Yes, correct. So
Okay, I got it.
that's why I say two types of buildings in that sense. So an actual building that is very hard to replicate nowadays, for sure, and buildings that have mixed construction. For example, I don't know if you heard my conversation with Sal when we discussed the monuments that we visited here in Portugal. But
No, mine is.
okay, but in the Convent of Christ, which is a Templar site, there's 3 layers that we found of constructions. These layers are lateral, which means that they are not on top of one another, like the ones I was describing, but actually side by side. So the timeline that they give is that the central part, let's say, was built first, and that was the most intricate, okay, the most sophisticated.
Mm-hmm.
The second and third parts, supposedly, had to be, come afterwards. No, I'm telling you the other way around. Sorry, the central part
Oh, okay.
came later. Yeah, sorry, the central part came later, and the other parts came after. But it has to be the other way around because the sophistication is all inverted. And what you find, and one clear example of that, is that you have this intricate doorway, very, very intricate, with incredible reliefs filled with symbolism, and very well made. And right next to it, covering a bit of the reliefs, you have a wall that is clearly very crude in comparison, right? So it's a brick, kind of old brick wall using blocks of stone, and it covers a little bit of that door. So no one would build a very intricate building right next to a wall that would cover part of a very intricate doorway that they were building right then, right? And in fact, you even see the wall sort of going against the actual reliefs. So it doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. So in this case, the 2 or 3 that we found construction layers were lateral or horizontal in the sense that they were side by side and not by layers of one on top of the other, right? Another interesting thing about that visit is that the third layer, so the most primitive layer, let's say, was an entire church-like
Do you have a name for
temple.
this building so that I can
Yes,
look it up just so we can
yes,
get a visual?
Yes, Convent of Christ in Tomar, Portugal.
Christ. Okay, found in Tomar, Portugal. Found it.
Yeah. So the third, what we call the third layer, which is the most primitive, had a church-like, temple-like structure that was in ruins. So the ceiling had collapsed, apparently, but had evidence of fire sometime along its history, which is very common with these buildings, the fires and all that. And we, we're not experts in the matter, but me and Silas were looking at it, and there was this sense, this idea, this feeling we had that we were looking at either pagan is a very blanket term, right? Because everything that isn't Christian was considered pagan, but pagan feel, perhaps I would say Druidic feel to it, with an altar that could perhaps have been used for Druidic rituals. And the composition was seemingly following those lines. But again, we're not experts, right? So we were basically looking at it and speculating about that.
Yeah,
So,
and Druidic religion and rituals was basically the Celtic religion, right?
yeah, Celtic is also a very broad term,
Loaded
because there were many
term.
types of Celts, and the Druids were, because for example, I consider personally that the Gothi, which were the priests of Odin for the Norse, I consider them to be a type of Druidism as well. Okay, because I see the similarities in the types of rituals, the sacrifices, also the focus on omens and that kind of thing, because it's mostly a religion of manipulation of perception. You understand? And it's like any shamanistic type of religion, where you have a priest class that is considered to have special powers, right? And if the population actually believes that they have that the priests have special powers, they enforce the special powers of the priest even without them needing to show, if you understand what I mean. For example, if you believe that a priest, by pointing a finger at you, will kill you, right? If you actually, truly, entirely believe, it is possible that you self-induce a state of illness, psychosomatic illness, just by the belief that the priest pointing the finger at you will cause an effect, right? So they were very much focused on that, and or at least from the records that we have, and I consider that there's a connection or a similarity between, for example, the Norse religions and the generalized, what is considered Celtic religions. So both would be Druidic in nature. And I mentioned Druidic now in relationship to the title of your live stream today, Bach. And if I'm talking too much, just shut me up. And
no. All the tangents are welcome. They're more than welcome.
Yeah.
That's how we go here. We go into different tangents all the time.
Yeah. Linking back to the title of your video, I think it needs to be understood that for a long, long time, and you know my distrust with historical record that is already public, but for a long, long time, even in historical record, Christianity per se as a religion has not, has taken many masks, has not remained the same, has not remained inalterable, right? And I think that one of those masks, for sure, and that is visible for a long time, has been the Druidic mask. Some people say Judaic, because I also think that the Jews, the Judaic religion is the original Judaic religion is Druidic as well.
Oh yeah.
And the mask, let's say, that Christianity or that the Druidic religions, one of the masks that they used has been Christianity. And this is why, of course, the greatest example of it being Catholicism, greatest in the sense that it's the most pervasive, right? For example, all of the saints' holidays coincide with Druidic holidays. There's not an exception. All of them, you can find a correlation between a saint or a holy day for Catholicism. It will link to a holy day in Druidic. Even the one we're now, which is the All Saints Day.
Halloween or Saints
yeah.
Day, yeah, All Saints Day.
Yeah, correct. So I think that it goes without saying that it wasn't Christian in the original sense, in the actual meaning of being Christian, but it did take the facade of being Christian. Now, what you mentioned about the document, the Tripoli Agreement, is something different because it's something, and I mean, me as Portuguese, I could immediately recognize how that went on, because that is basically very, very common for how the Portuguese would do business, which is there's a tax if we're Christian, then we're not Christian, right? There's, we'll pay more if, I don't know, we package things in red boxes, then we'll use yellow boxes. No problem. Right. So I think that it's in the sense of that document, I think it's more a mercantile type of mentality.
It's all about commerce. Yeah, you're right.
Right. That caused that, statement that no, we're not Christian. But this does not necessarily mean that the types of religions, the types of Christianities, because there wasn't a single Christianity practiced in the United States, was by its very essence Christian. You understand? And this is a different matter because you, for example, in our discussions, you've said how for you, the Shia Islam is not original Islam because it includes things that do not make sense in Islam
they
itself, right?
basically, they started off as a political expression of just a disagreement with the consensus, and then slowly, from just being a political movement, they're now like they have their own rituals, they have their own special days, a completely brand new religion. So that's how I see the Shia. By the way, speaking of the Treaty of Tripoli, I am sharing the right tab. Check this out. This is the actual article, and it's the very first in written form expression of the doctrine of separation of church and state outside the U.S. Constitution. And it's in this treaty as Article 11. It states, as the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, as it has in itself no character of enmity against the laws, religion, or tranquility of Muslims, as the said states never entered into any war or act of hostility against any Mohammedan nation, i.e. a crusade, it is declared by the parties that no pretext arising from religious opinions shall ever produce an interruption of the harmony existing between the two countries. So this was basically an admission by the American representative to the Barbary states that, hey guys, whatever trauma you had from the Crusades. Don't include us into it because we're not a Christian nation. We're just here to do business, like you said.
Yeah, that's clearly a mercantile statement.
Yeah.
It's a diplomatic, terminology in the sense. No, we have always been in harmony with all creeds. Because if he talks about Muslims there because he was addressing Muslims, but if he was talking to, I don't know, Buddhists, he would say, no, there are many Buddhists in the United States, and we've all lived in harmony. And it's one of those things.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't attribute that much importance in that document, in that regard, in the regards of admitting or not admitting that it is a Christian, because that is a merchant speaking, and I'm certain that Muslim merchants would think the same if they could avoid a tax or something like that. So I wouldn't go down that route, particularly in the explanation. What I would go is in the actual practice of the religions in the United States, and not just United States, like I said, because even in Europe, Christianity had long changed to something else, right?
Yeah.
And again, I was referring to the Shia thing because it's something that is closer to you. But one of the things that you mentioned is the rituals of self-mortification, right? That they go into, and that is actually something very Druidic. The self-sacrifice in the sense of causing self-harm to attain a higher state or something like that. So that was actually a mind control ritual.
Yeah, I wanted to
From
show actual images, but I remember once putting out a video with it, and
Mhm.
it got removed because it's gore. They're so bloody, but I can show you in private what they do. They literally slice themselves up with swords, and they do it
I've
on.
seen it. I've seen it in the
Have you seen
past.
it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's no need to. Yeah.
yeah, it's very
Um,
bad.
and I think that there was one I saw one with chains,
Mhm.
like a lash of chains, right?
Yeah,
Hitting a whip. Yeah.
yeah,
I also saw that. Yeah. But so in the same way that you would consider that is not proper Islam, although it takes the. I mean, if you ask someone else, they will say no. We're Muslim, right? But for you, that is not what Islam is about, correct? So, in the same sense, there was a lot mixed up with Christianity that wasn't Christian. And even before we were having a conversation, because it's all about image, right? I don't know if you've managed to see my video of my presentation about the fake, how the fake virtual realities are formed. But it's all, in this case, it's all about image. And we were having a conversation where the term Gnostic came about,
right.
and you had an image of what Gnostic means that comes from the world stage. Let's say it comes from the system
The official
itself. It
narrative. Yeah.
presents, yeah, and the word means something completely different. It is the research. It is the seeking of the truth,
Hmm.
which does not involve any of the I will say cartoonish kind of rituals that was associated with it. Of
Hmm.
course, there are people who call themselves Gnostics, being Satanists, others who call themselves Gnostics and practice some sort of Christianity, others who practice some sort of Islam as well. and they all consider themselves Gnostic, but it becomes a term that means everything and nothing at the same time when used like that, right? So, in the same way, people who were, and this is not their own fault, you know, they were born in a certain system, and it's very hard to see it any other way. We are equipped with tools now that our parents and grandparents did not have, right? And they were practicing the Christianity that they knew, but in fact, when we look at it, it has very little to do with what actually with actual Christ and with you know the precepts of what the religion was supposed to be. So I would go more down that road of showing how in the United States that harbored, apparently, according to historical records, that harbored people from mainly Christian countries, not only, of course, but mainly, how they went there and actually were practicing something different under the guise, under the mask of being Christian, without
Yeah,
knowing.
using the
You know,
cloak. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a
But
good.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a good.
sorry about
Yeah, I'm just changing up the title of this live stream. I'm including your name in it.
that.
And hit the likes, everyone. If you have any questions or comments, we're more than welcome. Okay, making sure I got the spelling right. Yes.
If I can answer a comment, may I?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah.
The floor is yours.
There's a comment here by Heinrich that states, I think a case can be made that the freedom of religion thing had more to do with the wars of religion in Europe between Christians of the last few hundred years before then. Yeah, I would say even further, Heinrich, in my opinion, is that the chaos in Europe was caused on purpose to cause the immigration. You understand?
Right.
Because if you want people to okay, imagine, of course they knew very well that the land existed there, but imagine that right now you discover a new continent, or no, the conversation now is Mars, right? Okay, so they want to send people to Mars, right? Whatever Mars is, but that's a different question. But how do you promote people going to Mars? If life is good here, why would people decide to move elsewhere and start a new life, taking risks? Who knows what you're going to find, etc. No, you have to make life very, very hard here, very chaotic, very, harsh, so that people actually want to go and settle elsewhere, right? And I think that all the chaos and religious persecution and so on and so forth in Europe was a sort of PR campaign to promote the settling of the New
Yeah,
World.
the
In my
mass
opinion.
immigration. So I had a Irish person comment about the potato famines in Ireland doing the same purpose, because it basically, this person was trying to say that the same people who did the thing where we all got sick and everything got locked down, they they were behind this.
You mean the Black Plague? Right? The Black
Yeah,
Plague.
no, the potato famine in the 1860s, I
I
think.
know. I was kidding
Oh no,
about
no,
the
oh yeah,
2020
no,
thing.
okay. Sorry, I'm I'm
Yeah.
one notch slower. So
Mhm.
yeah, a lot of the farms were owned by absentee British landlords who needed cheap labor in the New World in New England, what's now Massachusetts and um,
Maine.
uh,
Yeah.
Maine, New Hampshire,
Mhm.
Vermont, those places. So a lot of the people who were Irish couldn't, they didn't have any potato to harvest, no profits. They got evicted by the absentee landlords, and next thing you know, there was a option waiting for them, to protect them from being, living under a bridge with nothing. And that was hop on this ship in Liverpool that's going to take you to New York, and you're going to have a new life there. It's a very
Yes, and
convenient.
that is actually something that nowadays nobody addresses, but that is actually an instance of white slavery because everyone in the states
Right,
talk about black slavery and blacks being brought in as slaves, etc.
right.
But that you are describing was
Imagine the number of
nothing.
children they brought from Ireland with no
Yeah,
parents. That's pure
yeah,
slavery, yeah, and
yeah.
trafficking, yeah.
It was outright slavery because they were called indentured servants, right?
Hmm.
And being an indentured servant meant that you had to work. Oh, you're not officially a slave, okay? But you had to work to pay your passage. So when you arrive at the destination, you work in what they tell you to work, and basically would be worked to death to pay the passage, the ticket
Hmm.
to the Americas because you were escaping a chaotic situation in Europe, right, where you had famine and so on and so forth. So it is, of course, not officially, but it is nonetheless a situation of slavery, right? And
100%.
we must understand, that all this racial division, that I think that the part of the creation of the United States was to later on generate this racial division,
The black versus
um,
white, and yeah, 100%.
and whatever, yeah, because it was already, in my view, planned that the two would become one, right?
Hmm.
And that we saw that in 9/11 as a symbol that the two polar opposites of whatever it is that they could create into the system would eventually unite into one. But first, you had to bring it to a boiling point, right? You
Hmm.
have to instigate the division further until it reaches a point where then you can cause a shock in the system
Uh-huh.
that unites everyone. And we had speeches from Reagan talking about how we would all come together if there was an alien invasion. We have, not Reagan, Bush Senior talking
Right.
about the New World Order, where no longer the law of the jungle, but the rule of law will command, that sort of thing. And that is all about, in my opinion, the symbology of the two becoming one. So the uniting of all the polar opposites, but those polar opposites, we must understand, were also not organic. You understand? So they were
Mhm.
also caused to fight each other and to bring all the animosity to the fore, exactly to then be united as if you're no longer black, you're no longer white, you're no longer Asian, you're nothing, you're just a unit, right? You're brought
Right.
together in a sort of, like Tim Osman likes to say, and I agree with him in that observation, the gray aliens represent that new man, and they are gray
Uh-huh.
for a reason. You understand? It's not
Yeah.
black, it's not white, it's not yellow, it's gray. It's a sort of generic mix kind of
Like a
color,
future
right?
Homo sapien, yeah.
Yeah, you know. But yeah, that was my remark, and sorry for talking a lot.
No, no, no. Thank you. Thank you. It was very appropriate, including the tangent. And So this basically became a placeholder. I'll unmute the video, but just to give a sum for anyone who's joining us now, we basically were discussing the foundation of the America and its non-Christian aspect, and then we went into a few different other subjects. If you have any comments or observations yourselves, more than welcome to make them. I've also put out an invite in the Discord server if you want to hop on. I've invited Rebecca, but Rebecca's busy tonight, or she had other plans. Anyone who wants to join is more than welcome. I have these key points I've written. Let me see if we've covered.
Yes, and if anyone has questions or whatever comments about what I state, feel free also to
or even if you want to challenge on Armunn's observations or views, you're more than welcome. Sure. So, okay, I have this video, and this is something I found on Rumble.
In 1723, the Masonic constitutions were published and quickly became a canonical Masonic text.
Make sure to hit the likes, everyone.
Let's note that what came first, was it the Masonic Constitution or the Constitution of the United States? And of course, it was the Masonic Constitution that came first of 1723. And after that, they said, hey, this worked great for our Freemasonry and our land of the Freemason. We need one for that as well. We're going to call it the Constitution of the United States. And that came much later in 1789. By the 1760s, Americans had broken with the orthodoxy of the Grand Lodge and its official history. This was the shift from the moderns to the ancients. Somewhat counterintuitively, the moderns are the older form of Masonry and the ancients are the newer form. By the time the American Grand Lodges were formed after the American Revolution, 55% of them claimed that they had come from ancient lodges, showing that ancient Masonry had firmly established itself in the colonies. However, ancient Masonry was not the only variation that found a home in American colonies. Organizations that utilized symbolic Masonry formed, including the York Rite and Scottish Rite groups, which are characterized by their own hierarchical systems. The Scottish Rite, also referred to as perfect and sublime Masonry, or later known as ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, emerged through the ancients as a system of higher degrees or rankings. The Scottish Rite innovation initially introduced 25 degrees and would eventually have 33. For the purposes of this video, it's important to understand the place of Scottish Rite in America, since it's the type of Masonry with a distinct connection to American Jews. Now, it's appropriate that this thesis comes out of the University of Pennsylvania because Philadelphia, the enlightened colonial city, was the mother city of symbolic Masonry in the Western world and was the revival site for perfect and sublime Masonry, allowing it to become the active, ancient, and accepted Scottish Rite. It was also here that symbolic Masonry became established in the Jewish community and spread through them and across the United States. It is from this point we can begin to establish the connections between Judaism and Masonry in America. And ultimately, although it sounds surprising that many of the early Jews in America were Masons, upon further investigation, it would be more surprising if they weren't. The Star of David, the Seal of Solomon. For the modern Jew, the most recognizable symbol is probably the Star of David. This six-sided star, or hexagram, which has 6 vertices, 6 edges, with an interior angle of 60, or 666, often called a Jewish star, appears on the flag of the State of Israel, a country created to be a nation for the Jews. However, the exclusivity as a Jewish symbol is a modern development. The Star of David was used as early as the Bronze Age, and in its magical applications, it's normally referred to as the Seal of Solomon, referring to the son of King David, the biblical king known for his wisdom. The star was said to have magical properties, and its inscription on the signet of Solomon was said to give him access to the genius that helped him build his temple. Here we have an encyclopedia of Freemasonry and its kindred sciences. and a pretty nice looking book, the square and compass on the inside, but let's look at page 674. The Seal of Solomon, or the Shield of David, is a hexagonal figure consisting of two interlacing triangles, thus forming the outlines of a six-pointed star. Upon it was inscribed one of the sacred names of God, from which inscription it was supposed principally to derive its talismanic powers. These powers were very extensive, for it was believed that it would extinguish fire, prevent wounds in a conflict, and perform many other wonders. The Jews called it the Shield of David in reference to the protection to which it gave them, but to the other Orientalists it was more familiarly known as the Seal of Solomon. Among these people there is a very prevalent belief in the magical character of the King of Israel. He was esteemed rather as a great magician than as a great monarch, and by the signet which he wore, on which this talismanic seal was engraved, he is supposed to have accomplished the most extraordinary actions, and by it to have enlisted into his service the labors of the genii for the construction of his celebrated temple. Robinson Crusoe and the 1001 Nights are two books which every child has read, and which no man or woman ever forgets. In the later, there are many allusions to Solomon's Seal. Especially, there's a story of an unlucky fisherman who has fished up in his net a bottle secured by a leaden stopper on which the seal was impressed. And upon opening it, a fierce, evil genius comes forth, who gives this account of the cause of his imprisonment. Solomon, he said, the son of David exhorted me to embrace the faith and submit to his authority, but I refused. Upon which he called for this bottle and confined me in it, and closed it upon me with this leaden stopper, and stamped upon this seal the great name of God engraved on it. Then he gave the vessel to one of the genii, who submitted to him with orders to cast me into the sea. Did you know that the story of Aladdin with the genie in a bottle was a story about the Star of David and King Solomon? So Solomon's ability to build his temple, which was one of the greatest architectural feats ever, is said to have came from the magical powers of the Star of David. So no surprise we see the magical symbol being discussed here when we're talking about the dollar bill. And we have seen the 13 stars above the eagle have been arranged to represent the two interlocking triangles, the Seal of Solomon or the Star of David, a symbol that is widely used in magical text under a variety of magical names. And I would say that the seal being on the US dollar bill has more to do with its magical properties and less to do with just somebody wanting to put some stars on that paper. Now, the Temple of Solomon has specific significance for Masons because they have traced their history back to the stonemasons who worked on it. So the story of King Solomon using the Star of David's magical powers to help him build the temple would have been important to the Freemasons, and that's why we see them still using it to this day. The temple has specific significance for Masons because they trace their history back to the stonemasons who worked on it. That is referenced in 1 Kings chapter 5, verse 15, where Solomon had 70,000 carriers and 80,000 stonecutters in the hill. So this is when he was building his temple, and these 80,000 stonecutters or stonemasons would be the ones that the Freemasons can trace their lineage back to. These are Jews. The people who were building the temple under King Solomon were certainly Jews. And if the Freemasons can trace their lineage back to the stonemasons who worked on King Solomon's temple, aka the 80,000 stonecutters in the hills from 1 Kings, then they certainly are saying that they are Jews and that their lineage comes from Jews. So there's evidence that Freemasonry and their heritage certainly comes from Jews, and they do believe that they are the ones who built King Solomon's temple. So this story of them using the Star of David or the Seal of Solomon and its magical powers to help them build the temple would be an important story to the Masons. While the star is certainly not one of the most important symbols of Masonry, it does appear in a number of areas, including on seals and as part of the architecture. And I will argue that the star is one of the most important symbols in Freemasonry, and we can see some examples of that easily. Let's take a look at Albert Pike, famous Freemason from the early 1800s, who is a 33-degree Scottish Rite Mason. We can see the eagle like we have on the dollar bill with the 33 here, and again, more double-headed eagle here. But let's take a look at his book, Morals and Dogma, the Ancient Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, and see just what kind of stuff these guys are into. The occult, perhaps? Lucifer, the light bearer. Lucifer, the son of morning. It is he who bears the light. So this guy is, not only is he a 33-degree Mason, but he's also into the occult. We can see it classifies this as 19th century occultists, and you can definitely learn that if you read his book here. But this is not the only book that he wrote. He also wrote this book, Masonic Formulas and Rituals. Now, this is absolutely a book of magic. It's a grimoire, or a book full of spells and rituals. And Albert Pike studied Freemasonry extensively, locked himself into the Masonic temple and the library, and revised all of the Masonic magical spells and rituals into this book. Now, the interesting things here are, of course, what appears to be a sphere Earth. We've got the square and compass, and we have the Star of David. And the all-seeing eye is right here, and another square and compass. So I would say that the second most important symbol to the Freemasons is the Seal of Solomon. Next to the square and compass, this is definitely the most prominent symbol associated with Freemasonry. But I would say number 2 would be the Seal of Solomon. And one example after the next can be found. This is at the Grand Lodge. Let's see, where does it say? The Grand Lodge of the State of Israel. So this is in Israel at the Masonic Grand Lodge. This is the Masonic HQ. There isn't going to be a place in the world that is more Masonic than the Grand Lodge in the State of Israel. And we can see here, of course, that in addition to the square and compass, the other symbol incorporated here is, of course, the Star of David or the Seal of Solomon. And the all-seeing eye. We've got the all-seeing eye, the square and compass, the Seal of Solomon, and for some reason they are symbolizing the Pythagorean theorem here, or perhaps Pythagorean triplets. But do note that there are a few symbols that are very important to the Masons. They can be seen in this picture. It is the all-seeing eye, the square and compass, the Seal of Solomon or the Star of David, the Pythagorean theorem or Pythagorean triplets, and it looks as though a pentagram around the neck. So I do believe that the Star of David or the Seal of Solomon is one of the most important symbols in Freemasonry, and we can see that is clear as day. Historically, in colonial America, one notable example is on the seal of the Charleston Lodge of Perfection. This seal contains a number of Masonic symbols, including the most famous and identifiable one, a square and compass. But in the corner directly above the square and compass, there is the Seal of Solomon. The placement here would seem to indicate a similar regard for the two symbols. In fact, one could argue that the Seal of Solomon is most visible symbol as it's surrounded by a light circle, or the sun, it looks like, against a dark background, while the rest of them all have a dark background. Now, I do want to mention something about this image right here. It's quite an interesting image. And right off the bat, it doesn't seem like there's too much here. But for one, we can see the black and white checkered floor of the lodge, or as they would interpret that as the floor of the King Solomon's temple. Of course, we have the square and compass, the Seal of Solomon. And look at what is going on here. The sun's shining here, and it is going onto this compass. And you can see the shadow from it. And it's the shadow, you can see the shadow going this way. And here it says, Arcanum Sacratus Cunta Adoptus, which, if you translate this, Arcanum Secruto Cunta Adeptus, you'll see that it means a great secret or mystery is hidden from all obtaining. Again, what this is saying is a great secret hidden from all being able to obtain it. What with the sun shining on a compass have anything to do with a great secret being held from all obtaining? And I don't know exactly, but it's something that has to do with the sun and compasses. And in the early days, this is how you would do celestial navigation and essentially prove that the earth is a sphere. It's how Eratosthenes did it. He did it with the shadows of the stick, or the well experiment. And so, once again, I'm wondering why there is such a secret or symbolism here for the Pythagorean theorem, because the Pythagorean theorem was again used by Eratosthenes to prove a spherical earth. And I'm not going to get into sphere or flat earth here, but I will notice that there is some kind of a secret from all obtaining that has something to do with a compass and the sun. So not only to this day, but since the very founding of America, we can find the Star of David. Here is the Seal of David, or the Star of Solomon, right next to the square and compass on a fireback from Massachusetts, circa 1756. And a closer look at that, of course, you could see the fireback, square and compass. You could call this a pentagram, I guess, and right next to the Seal of Solomon. In a discussion of objects of Masonic importance that also have Jewish significance, the Temple of King Solomon is probably the most important for the Masons. And I will show that again in this ancient Freemason book, which is written entirely in code. And, well, not entirely. The index is in plain English, I guess. But the majority of this book is written completely in code. So if you would like to read this book, you're going to have to be good at cryptology. And in the back of the book, we can find something that we can actually read here. King Solomon. So we can see how important King Solomon and King Solomon's temple is to the Freemasons. Even the black and white checkered floor that you will find at all Masonic lodges is a reference to King Solomon's temple. Because the Freemasons trace their lineage to the stonemasons who helped build King Solomon's temple, it has particular significance to them. So I don't know how much more clear you need to get on a connection between Freemasonry and Jews when they have traced their heritage back to the Freemasons who built King Solomon's temple in Israel. Now, I've only begun to touch on this thesis, and there is much, much more information to cover. But for the length of the video, I'm going to have to leave the rest of the document up to the reader to learn for themselves. But my final conclusion is that the United States of America is the land of the Freemason, not the land of the free, home of the brave. It's a bunch of nonsense. And when you can't even go grocery shopping without putting a cloth diaper on your head, I don't know why you would call this land of the free, but this is certainly land of the Freemason. And we can see that since the beginning, since Christopher Columbus even came to America, that this all along was a Jewish enterprise. And I believe that they came to America in search for a land that was free, where they could practice Freemasonry without being expelled from countries, which was happening frequently for them. Everywhere the Jews went, they were getting kicked out of countries. And if you look into Freemasonry and its occultic, Luciferian, satanic roots, I can see why that people don't want to have Freemasonry around at all. So when Spain was going to kick them out, they used all their money and loaded up onto 3 boats, the Nina Pinta Santa Maria, and they went sailing to a land that they knew was there because it had already been mapped by Pyrees and all kinds of other people who had been to America. The Tartarians were already there. And when Christopher Columbus got off the boat with full of Jews to their land of the Freemason, where they could freely practice their occultic religion, they were surprised to find Tartarians, and lo and behold, these were the other lost 10 tribes of Israel. So now that we have some of the facts straight about Christopher Columbus, why they came to America, and really truth about the founding of America and how it was founded on Freemasonry, and even the Constitution of the Freemason comes before the Constitution of the United States. So no surprise that the first president of the United States was a prolific Freemason, and this guy was entrenched in Freemasonry, and all the architecture that they have in places like Washington, D.C. are all Masonic architecture. And this guy even went out to lay the cornerstone of the United States Capitol building on September 18, 1793, which has specific astronomical significance. But we can see here that George Washington was a very infamous Freemason, and all of the U.S. presidents after him were as well. And here we got him with the hand in the coat, or the hidden hand, or they call that the lion's paw, where they put their hand inside of their coat like this. That's certainly a Freemason sign right there. And anytime you're going to speak up or say anything negative about the Jews, of course, you're going to be called an anti-this or an anti-that. But I believe Henry Ford was a smart guy, and it's interesting that he had to write 4 books on the dangers of the international Jew. The International Jew, the World's Problem, was the headline on some papers. And you will see aspects of Jewish power in the United States, Jewish influence on the American life, Jewish activities in the United States, and the International Jew, the World's Foremost Problem. These are all linked to Freemasonry, and how Freemasonry needs to be abolished once and for all, and it should not be allowed to exist. It needs to be squashed. So if I was to join any political party, it would not be a Republican or Democrat. It would only be the anti-Masonic Party, as that is the biggest problem in the United States, is that this is the land of the Freemason and the United States of Israel.
Okay, so that was basically a refutation of the America founded as a Christian nation trope. His belief that it was founded to be a safe haven for all the expelled Jews. That's a very interesting theory. It kind of makes sense when I remember hearing about the Iraqis in 2003 during the Gulf War invasion by the Americans. They were calling the enemy, they were calling the Americans Yehud. They were calling them the Jews. So maybe they knew what was up. But this was the other video I wanted to play.
Through monopoly, bribery.
Can I just comment on
society members?
Yes, absolutely.
Can I just comment on the video we watched?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, 2 comments. One was no, it wasn't created as a safe haven because those that they left behind were also Masons as them. Of course, wearing different masks, but different cultural masks and social masks, but they were all on the same team. And I would say that, of course, what is now, and this is, of course, my opinion, but what is now identified as Mason, I think it is also an offshoot of the previous Druidics that I was talking about. And of course, there are many branches of Druidism. The more natural one is usually the one we have in pop culture and in historical terms, like Wicca kind of thing, like worshipping in nature and so on. But that is just one of the facets, because it also involves calculation and, like I said, mind control. those two comments were the most important to add to that video. That yes, they knew very well, and they knew very well what was there. They knew very well what they were doing, and to cause enough population to move there, they caused whether it was real or just in perception, but caused some sort of perception of chaos in Europe and other places, but especially Europe, to move people over. And
Hmm.
this is what I think that, and even a few weeks back, we were discussing the situation in Israel, and you were saying how many are leaving there, right, and
Right.
moving to other places, and under the exact same pretext: oh, war, oh, we're being attacked, oh, we're under duress, and so on, right? So it is always the best motivator to move people around. Is the
And they do see themselves as shepherds, corralling a herd.
yes, 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 exactly, exactly. And they do think that they are actually doing what is best for mankind, because
Yeah,
they
they're always
think,
thinking they're thinking the best for us. Yeah.
yeah, the theory of Darwin, I think,
Hmm.
was basically then showing what they think man is, not in a sense of a theory, but how they actually view man. They view man as an animal that evolved beyond its nature, let's say. And so since they are the illuminated ones, they have to regulate that animal so that it doesn't, cause problems and all that thing, and doesn't hurt itself, that kind of thing. That's how they view man. You see,
Yeah.
which again points towards the idea um, that it's a very animalistic, as the Druidics are, very animalistic view of animalistic isn't the word. There's an exact word for those kinds of religions, but it's a very um, low vision of what man is. You
Hmm.
understand? It doesn't, because the other religions that even then suffered alterations viewed man as the greatest of creations, right, or the greatest of representatives of life.
Hmm.
But in this case, and what you see in the Darwinistic, is that man is actually on par with the lowest, right? And
Yeah.
so it has to be controlled. That
Yeah.
is
If
just
anything, they're just an apex predator, but they're in the end just primate mammal, right?
yeah, yeah. But so go ahead for the next. I just had those comments.
And Marcel in the chat was asking. He has a very interesting observation. Uh, Very funny there, Barnacle. He asked, "Do you also think the U.S. is really old Babylon?" I heard that more than once online, and same here. I've heard about comparing, the horror of Babylon and the Tower of Babel and all that. There's a channel I follow. It's a channel called Mystery Babylon, and
Mhm.
the content creator is very smart. So they're more of a Christian themed channel, but that's their view. I think that the U.S. is modern day Babylon.
Well, I would say not just the U.S. Of course, the U.S. is the visible empire of nowadays that is falling, right? But we just need to be reminded when we talked about the Portuguese in that live stream of the name that the Portuguese chose for the new world, which was Brazil, right? And Brazil was the
Hmm.
comes from the designation High Brazil, that was a mythical island supposedly in the Atlantic that disappeared, where the gods came from. And of course, it does not necessarily mean that the island disappeared. It may have just disappeared of the map, right? But it certainly links to the idea of Atlantis, and Atlantis has always been linked with the idea of Babylon anyway. So I would say that that is a strong connection in my opinion. Still, and everyone here already knows, but I keep repeating, I have very little trust in historical records. So we're reading a narrative, in my opinion, and not actual facts.
And an agenda within that narrative. You know, they have an
Yes.
agenda for that.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you, man.
Yeah.
My mic is not good, huh, Heinrich? Okay.
I can hear you well. I can hear
You
you
can?
well.
Okay, good. Thank you. I also had this other video I wanted to share. It's not as long as the this one. Let me see here.
Is and has
Here we
been
go.
completely controlled by secret societies since the beginning of civilization. The United States was a Masonic creation designed to spread fake democracy around the world. There has never been a true democracy on Earth. In fact, all 33 signers of the Declaration of Independence were spoiled secret society rich kids of Euro royalty who went to Harvard, Oxford, Yale, Cambridge, and other private schools, all of which have secret societies. Most famous of all are the Cap and Gown and Skull and Bones. Here are just a few you might be familiar with. John Hancock, Harvard. Samuel Adams, Harvard. Benjamin Franklin, private tutors. John Adams, Harvard. And the list of well-to-do signers goes on and on, from Yale, Princeton, Cambridge, Oxford. It's kind of funny how they never mentioned this in history class. All secret societies are offshoots of ancient Freemasonry, which is the black art of mind manipulation. This is the true meaning of the compass and square. By manipulating our innate mental archetypes with curves and angles, balance and unbalance, Freemasons control our minds through art, buildings, music, language, and toxins in our food, water, and air. Freemasonry is the cornerstone of all secret societies and is simply a massive, well-organized, clandestine cult of criminals who control through monopoly, bribery, extortion, corruption, murder, terror, and war. The real problem in America is that a massive amount of people are in secret societies. They're not just in Hollywood, Wall Street, and Washington. They're on Main Street, they're mainstream, and they control everything. And it's not just the elite, it's our friends, our family, our co-workers. And folks, y'all can keep up the deaf, dumb, and blind. Silence is golden act. But the time has come to expose and eradicate all secret societies. The reason the numeric language of secret societies blatantly proliferates all our global media is because secret societies are desperate to hold the vast membership together as the world awakens to their ancient and fraudulent ways. Using this numeric language, they can communicate anything they wish using numbers, like business opportunities, low-quality goods, poisonous products, and even terror attacks. Each letter in this chart correlates to the number above it by simply reducing that letter's position in the 26-letter English alphabet. Example, Z is the 26th letter, and 2 plus 6 equals 8. Thus, Z is 8. 8 means good, God, or a non-secret society member. Often, fraternal law enforcement call 8s a CAD, 314, which is an 8, or a CW, 3 plus 5, which is 8. As you can see, F, O, and X are all really 6. So Fox is 666. The very simplified definitions of the secret society numeric language are as follows. 1, or any number that reduces to 1, 10, 19, 28, 55, etc., represents the top, the best, the king. Examples of this are IRS, 991 equals 19 equals 10 equals 1, or Microsoft, which equals 46, which equals 10, which equals 1. 2, or anything that reduces to 2, like 11, 20, 29, etc., means to be awake, enlightened, illuminated, knowing. Examples of this are Jesus, 15131 equals 11 equals 2, or gold, 7634 equals 20 equals 2. 3, which is also 12, 21, 30, means the bottom or low quality. Examples are Kia, 291 equals 12 equals 3, or Geico, 75936 equals 30 equals 3. 4, which is 13, 31, and 40, but not 22, means secret society related, or a member of a secret society. This is the reason Taylor Swift wears a 13, because she is an ambassador for all the Masonic youth. As is Bugs Bunny. Examples of 4 are VH1, 481 equals 13 equals 4, or CNN, 355 equals 13 equals 4. Now 22 is a master number. 22 is a warrior for God, for truth, for good. Secret societies hate 22 and often depict them as radicals or losers, or criminals, like Rambo, 91426 equals 22. Now you know why secret societies killed JFK on 11/22. 11 to be awake, and 22 a warrior for truth. Now 5 is very important. 5 is 14, 23, 32, 50, 86, etc. 5 means unbalanced, bad, war, stress, work, confusion, deceit, chaos, or lies. 5 represents the Masonic compass and square. Do you see it? The square makes the angle, the compass makes the curve. 5 is where we get the saying to 86 something, or to take the fifth. This is also why a lot of top athletes wear 23 or 32. A couple examples are AT&T, 122 equals 5, or Grinch, 799538 equals 41 equals 5. By the way, most movies are Masonic training films, and the ultimate Masonic training film is The Wizard of Oz. 6, which is 15, 24, 33, etc., means an illuminated secret society member who has contributed to the great work, which is keeping the masses asleep. An interesting study in secret society rankings is how Kobe Bryant was number 8, God's number, then he butt raped that girl in Colorado, and now he's 24, which is 6, meaning an illuminated Freemason. Examples of 6 are IBM, 249 equals 15 equals 6, or eBay, 5217 equals 15 equals 6, or Dell, 4533 equals 15 equals 6. Also, pay attention to the curved E in Dell. That means 5. That's why we have e-commerce. It's 5 commerce, Masonic commerce. 7, which is 16, 25, 34, etc., means neutral, good or bad, indifferent. 7 is also the real meaning of the Masonic G, indicating that their trickery can be used for good or evil. Examples of 7 are Google, 766735 equals 34 equals 7, or Shrek, 18952 equals 25 equals 7. As I mentioned before, 8, which is 17, 26, 35, etc., it means balance, God, good, Christian, or a non-secret society entity or person. Examples of 8 are God, 764 equals 17 equals 8, or Creator, 3951269 equals 35 equals 8. 9, like 5, is very important. 9 is 18, 27, 36, 45, 666, which equals 18, equals 9. 9 means the end, or to end, apathetic, cruel, cold, evil, calculating, ruthless. Examples of 9 are Jeep, 1557 equals 18 equals 9. VW, 45 equals 9. eHarmony equals 45 equals 9. 9 means to end. Everything in our world is coded using this numeric language. In this Beatles picture, Paul is showing 3 fingers and a circle, which is 10, thus the Masonic 13. John is showing the hook'em horns, which is really 11 or 2, illuminated. The yellow submarine is 5 syllables, like abracadabra, and also reduces down to 23. Abracadabra is 5 syllables and out of sync with the even pulse of our heart. When a magician says abracadabra, for a split second it causes our consciousness to shut off. Why do you think Hannah Montana was so big? Now you know why he changed his name to Barack Obama. It's called neuro-linguistic programming. Using combinations of words, numbers, colors, gestures, symbols, syllables, and sounds, secret societies can convey any message numerically. However, the primary numeric message they promote to their mass of minions is 9/11 and 5. 9/11, which means 9,
Hit the likes, everyone. Hit the
and
likes.
11 or 2, the awakening. 9/11 means keeping the masses ignorant of their clandestine corruption and control. Now 5 represents unbalance, or any process by which they keep non-secret society members aggravated, ignorant, asleep, or dead. The easiest way to learn the numeric language of secret societies is for us to just get into a bunch of examples. I'm going to go fast, but you can pause or rewind at any time. Many of these examples have multiple messages, so please be sure to take a close look at all of the elements in the examples. It is my contention that secret society members are getting so dumb that now they put the numbers right out in plain sight with minimal calculation or conversion necessary. Automobile advertising is the most blatant. Everybody knows that everybody gets a different deal when buying a car for many reasons. Price, options, credit. So why do all we see are 5 and 9/11 in the automobile advertising numbers? Yeah, Ram, 9 to end, 5 to attack. And it's just not automobile advertisement. It's in every cell phone commercial. It's on cereal boxes. Soda, Pepsi is 9/11. It's in skincare product commercials, insurance ads, internet companies, energy drinks. Red Bull is 9/11. It's in alcohol. Bud Light is 9/11. As you can see, the numeric language of secret societies is everywhere. Telephone ads, cable TV, toothpaste, tuxedos. It's in everything. 5 React Gum is another blatant example. 5, bad for you, attack you. And 9/11, keep you asleep no matter what. Of course, the banks are in on this ancient numeric scam. Also, the charities. Don't forget your travel ads, 45, 50, 86. And, of course, your local pest control, 50. Don't forget vitamins, 32 minerals, which means bad for you. And now you know why everything's always 1995. 19's essentially 9/11. 1 to begin, 9 to end, and 5 to aggravate no matter how you can, the Masonic 5. Their abracadabra bullshit. I hope everybody who learns this numeric language shouts it from the rooftops. Because shout is 9/11 also. As is tide. And God knows what kind of crap they put in there to soak into our skin and kill us. All of our food is purposely toxic. Velveeta is 9/11, scientifically designed to prevent your brain from working properly and prevent you from the Enlightenment. Eat some. Feel the buzz in your head. In fact, garlic, onions, and spices are some of the worst offenders. This is one of the reasons they wrote the book Dracula. Dracula is part of 9/11. Now, we all know fast food is bad for you, but did you know the Zionists drink the adolescent DMT laden blood of their enemies and then have the bodies discarded into hamburger and sausage? Yum Brands, which owns many fast food chains, is 5, bad for you. The reason 5 and 9 are plastered on everything is because secret societies are desperate to hold together their massive membership as the world is waking to their corruption. A majority of Americans are in secret societies. Now, I'm sure you remember the ads, $5 foot long from Subway. Well, $5 foot long is abracadabra. Just the way it is abracadabra. Think outside the bun is abracadabra. You know when it's real is abracadabra. Crispy tender new is abracadabra. Have the kids shout out sweet potato fries. Perfect harmony. Open happiness. Amazingly smooth. Rethink possible. Even Comedy Central is abracadabra. Victoria's Secret. Now you know why it's always 5. And when it's not 5, it's 9/11. Shrimp, by the way, as with all animals that eat feces, causes a mild neurotoxin and will prevent you from enlightenment. This is why some religions don't eat pork or bottom feeders, which is why Oscar is 9/11 and Meyer is 8, food for non-secret society members. 19, as I mentioned before, is basically 9/11, 1 to begin, 9 to end. 19 Entertainment makes American Idol. American Idol is abracadabra. Here's a nice picture of Simon Cowell on his Masonic jet ski. Let's get something straight right now. If you are in a secret society, you are responsible for all of the crimes of all secret societies. The World Trade Centers were built like an 11, on an 11, and destroyed on an 11 for one reason and one reason only, to destroy 11, a message to secret society members, to keep the masses asleep. Now you know who did 9/11. As you can see from the wide-ranging examples in this video, the numeric language of secret societies is the key to linking all of these criminals and criminal organizations together.
This
We
is
will
what
never have
Tim
peace
Osmond
on
would
Earth
call the
until we get
programming
rid of
class.
secret societies.
For we are opposed around
Yes.
the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day.
Yeah, the sound stopped.
Its
Yeah.
preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned.
I don't
no
know
rumor
why,
is
but
printed,
yeah, it's back now.
no secret is revealed.
And secrecy is their primary advantage. Cracking the enemy's code is the key to winning a war. Now you know how to see the truth from the lies. All secret society charities are nothing more than tax shelters and fundraising schemes. Beneath the facade of philanthropy is pure evil. Let's look at a bunch more examples just to show how complete their sphere of control is. More people go with Masonry. Go, which is 7-6, is 13, Freemason. Seen a lot of that lately. Nothing new. Coca-Cola's 1313, Mason. You can GoPro with Fidelity, 1313, Mason. GoPro with GoPro cameras. The U.S. snowboarding team is 1340 with a Masonic upside-down star. Burton Snowboard Clothing just puts it right on there. Or you can go with the 13 Family Mason 4-pack of skiing. GAC, Great American Country. How about the Masonic G, 13, the Mason Star, just to see things a little more truthful. Facebook, Mason. Lucky Jeans, Mason. Kit Kat, Mason. The Simpsons, Mason. Lady Gaga, Zionist Mason. Music television, Mason television. This is why Masons love to name their kids Molly, Madison, and Michael, because M is the 13th letter of the alphabet. Or you can go fresh with Dove. They like to make God look bad, so they have Hot Wire. Sky Vodka. Wide receivers get crushed. They love to crush God. Acura is God. Disneyland is God. His Story Channel is God. Olay Skin Products is 8 for non-secret society members. Definitely not good for you. And burgers are only for 8s, non-secret society, and kings are bad for you. Fox is 666, which is 18, which is 9. Mad Money is 666. 666 Olive Garden. 666 Whammo. 666 Pods. 666 Dr. Phil. Wendy's is 666. Miracle Whip 666. And here's Taylor Swift in JH, which is 1818666. Stan is 9, evil. Sue is 9, evil. Supervillains on Glee, evil. The Masonic G and 13, Mason. BP is 9, which is evil. Yet the lotus flower is the foot of God. Look at these numbers from the news reports on the Gulf oil spill. 32, 9, 23, 32, 32, 1, and 4. All of which add up to 5, which means Masonic bullshit. And the humdinger? Plan Z for BP to fix oil leak. Plan Z? Z is 8. Z is God. Z is a non-secret society member. This was a secret society scam. Apple, as we know from the Bible, is bad for you. 23. Extends 5 and 8. Bad for good people. Compound 5. Bud Light is 9/11, and BL is 23, bad for you. Monsters are bad for you. Banks are bad for you. TBS versus Enterprise, Budget, all 5s. Procter & Gamble, 7 plus 7, 14 equals 5, bad for you. 32 passengers on the bus, $50,000 off your house. Fat people, 23 and 9. 132, this means bullshit for you. This is how I figured it out. I got a letter that said, as of January 23rd. I just thought that was strange, and I cracked their code. 123, 321, 321, 523, 23 minutes in hell. 23 highlighted on a numerology book. Volvo is 23, nice penis emblem to Osiris. 23 and 5 are everywhere. Mops, Macy's, entertainment, charities, car rentals, even the Doors, May 23rd. The Doors were a naval intelligence project designed to lure people into the desert who figured out the numeric code. Take the King's Highway west, the 10, to the Snake, the 111, to the ancient lake, the Salton Sea. The Doors inside cover, Saturday, September 23rd, 9:23. The news uses 32 and 23 all the time to tell you it's a lie. Report that GE is paying back $32 billion. That's a lie. The 32,000 increase was the most since January 2008 and followed a revised 19,000 gain. That is a lie. TMZ, all lies, and Tosh.0, 86.5. About as bad as it gets in the world today. USA, 32. USAA 1311, illuminated Freemason. Lysol kills, which is why it adds up to 20, which is 2, which is 11, which is the hook'em horns. Helen Keller, the inventor of sign language, said it means I love you, Satan. 11 is often used to depict lies. James Mulva of ConocoPhillips says ConocoPhillips pays a 47% tax rate. That's a lot. 47 is 11. I say bullshit. Now let's wrap this film up with 9/11. 9/11 is the secret society's great work to keep the masses asleep, to end the awakening any way they can. That is why 9/11 is everywhere. Walmart is a clever one. Walmart is 25, which is 7. The symbol is 6. 7 plus 6 is 13, Freemasonry. Walma is 5, bad for you. RT is 9/11. Walmart, very clever. The fake sugar aspartame is 31, Freemasonry. And the formula E951 is actually 5951, 9/11. Lowe's is 9/11. Optima is 9/11. K9 is 9/11. Bedhead is 9/11. A1 is a red 11, which is 9/11. Vans is 11 because it's associated with dangerous sports. Visa is the Masonic 4, 9/11. JCP is 11 in red, 9/11, and they have luggage for $59. Here's some Scott's Manure for 9/11. Shell is 9/11. Dailies, by the way, adds up to 7 because it's night and day, good and bad. Coors Light is 9/11. The View is 9/11. John Lennon was murdered on 9/11 by secret societies, 12/8/1980. The movie Hannah is 9/11. And in Avatar, the bad guy is 11, the neutral girl is 7, and the first bulldozer to tear into the tree of life was bulldozer number 8, God's number. They like to make God look bad, which is why Ricky Bobby drove the 26 car, which is 8, and Ricky's first car was also 26, Laughing Cow Malt Liquor, which is laughing 7, the Masons are laughing at you, cow, the Hindu reference to God, malt, the king, and liquor, God forbid, that's 11. 7812 also adds up to 18. 666. You got it. Ricky Bobby is Karma Sutra, a balanced 22. Unlike Talladega Nights, Abracadabra, which is bad for you. As is, I want to go fast. And you ain't first, you're last. All abracadabra, all out of sync with your homeostasis. And my favorite of all is Ricky Bobby's last car, 62, also 8, a good person, a non-secret society member, a godly person. And because his father had put a cougar in the car, he was driving for Me Cougar. Well, folks, ME is 9 and Cougar is 11. Me Cougar is 9/11. If you want to know who blew up the World Trade Centers, then just go round up these producers and directors and actors and all the people that put the crap in all of the things that we've looked at in this movie. That is who did 9/11 and continue to execute 9/11 on us via 5, 24/7, 365 for the past 26,000 years. The numeric language of secret societies is the key to linking all of these criminals and criminal organizations together, and for the first time in a long time, allowing humanity to live freely on Earth. If you are in a secret society, now would be a good time to repent and ask for forgiveness, for in the process of evolution, the truth will inevitably be victorious. God bless us all. From a true 22. Now what are we going to do?
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship
Every government,
and concealment.
every corporation, every organization, even the individual secret society members themselves constantly display secret society symbolism. Today, I'm going to teach you about the elephant in the room. Secret societies communicate with numbers in front of your face, everywhere you look. Once and for all, anyone with a third-grade math education using this simple numeric language will be able to prove for themselves that the world is indeed controlled under a grand conspiracy, with all secret societies intricately operating for and against each other in a scripted charade known as the Great Work. This video contains hundreds of real-life examples to quickly sharpen your mathematic and linguistic skills. Never again will you be deceived by authorities, organizations, corporations, criminals, or cabals. Just like their secret society symbols that they have plastered everywhere, they have done the same with numbers. Whatever your area of expertise, be it 9/11, chemtrails, banking, GMO foods, or free energy, learn these numbers, for I promise in your research you will find secret societies using these numbers to communicate. and they will be the proof that you need to tie these criminals together. Until we rid the world of secret societies, we will never solve any of these problems, because all of these problems come from secret societies. Anyone who refutes this numeric language is a secret society scumbag, and the time has come for us to expose and eradicate these criminal cabals from Earth. This numeric language is very easy to learn, and once it clicks in your mind, you will see it everywhere you look. We're going to start with some basic third grade math, reducing numbers. 1 plus 1 is 2. Therefore, 11, which is 1 plus 1, equals 2. 2 plus 3 equals 5. So 23 equals 5. Simple reduction. In the numeric language of secret societies, all numbers, no matter how big, are reduced to a single digit. Thus, 3.
Hey guys, I have to take a little time out for just a, you can say, a little momentary emergency. Armunn, if you're still here, do you want to take over once this presentation ends? I don't think it's a total of 42 minutes. I don't know how much more is left, but I'm thinking maybe 5 or 10 minutes. I might be back before then. But if not, would you like to take over and just answer any questions in the chat and make any observations? Or
Sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
okay, thank you.
365 equals 14 equals 5. Now here is a mathematical principle that will help you quickly reduce numbers. Any number added to 9 and reduced equals that same number. Let's take a look. 1 plus 4 equals 5, and 9 plus 1 plus 4 equals 14, which equals 5. So when reducing numbers, we can toss out the 9s to help us quickly reduce the number to a single digit. In this chart, I have numbered the position of every letter in the English alphabet. Thus, A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, and so forth. Please note how 9 is I and R, because 18 reduces to 9. And we just learned in mathematics, when reducing, 9 is irrelevant or irregular. Now let's take a look at the other letters and how they reduce to a single digit. A is 1, J is the 10th letter in the alphabet, which reduces to 1. S is the 19th letter in the alphabet, which reduces to 10, which reduces to 1. B is 2, K is 11, which equals 2. T is 20, which equals 2. 3 is C, L, and U. 4 is D, M, V. 5, E, N, W. 6, F, O, X. 7, G, P, Y. 8, H, Q, Z. Z is the 26th letter in the alphabet, which reduces to 8. And 9 is I and R. Now that you understand how each letter reduces to a single digit, don't bother to remember what number the letter is. Simply remember the 1s, which are A, J, and S, the 2s, which are B, K, and T. And that way, when you see a word, you'll quickly just identify that a K is a 2, that a J is a 1, and so forth. All languages are derivatives of the numeric language 1 through 9. Let's look at the definitions of man's first language, which are based upon the cycles of life. 1, we exist. 2, we awake to the fact we exist. 3, now that we're awake, we become creative. 4, we study what we created. 5, we go out and we struggle to make that happen. 6, we master that task. 7, we rest. 8, we receive our reward from that task. And 9, the cycle ends and a new cycle begins. Secret societies still use this numeric language everywhere you look, in everything you see. The primary numbers they use are 9, 5, and 2. 9 to end, and 2, the awakening. So you'll see 9/11 everywhere. And 5, which is war, stress, struggle. That's any process by which they can keep you from awakening. 5 is the compass and square. Do you see it? The angle and the curve of the compass and square. This is also what's meant by the checkered floor and yin and yang, the opposites, to cause deception. 1 up, 1 down, opposites. Anything they can do to cause struggle, because when you struggle, it prevents you from awakening. This use of opposites to deceive can be used for good or evil, which is what the Masonic G means. G is number 7, which means to be at rest or neutral, good or bad. Look at this picture of Chris Angel and his friend, where the Masonic G has been replaced by the number 7. Now that you know the basic definitions of the numbers 1 through 9, and you know how to convert any letter in the alphabet to a single-digit number, let's take a look at some real-life examples on how to convert a word into a single-digit number. And you'll start to see how words really do have two meanings. Red Bull is 9/11. Red, which is 954 equals 18 equals 9, which means to end, and Bull, which is 2333, which equals 11, which equals 2, which means awake. Conan, CO, is 36, which is 9. NAN is 515, which is 11. Now you know why it's orange and white. Conan is 9/11. KFC is very simple. 2, 6, 3, 11, 9. 9/11 backwards. Shell is 9/11. 1, 8, which is 9. 5, 3, 3, which is 11. 9/11. Pepsi, 75719 equals 29, which is 9/11. Mountain Dew is 9/11 and 5. Dew Tour is 5 and 9/11. Ion is 965, 9/11. Bud Light, 234 equals 9. 39782 equals 29, which is 11. Bud Light, 9/11. Cheez-It, 38558 is 29, which is 9/11. And It is 92, which is 9/11. Velveeta, 45345521 is 29, aka 9/11. Stay Puffed, 1217 equals 11. Puffed, 7362 equals 18, which is 9. Tide, 2945 equals 2, 18 equals 9, 9/11. The artificial sweetener aspartame, scientifically known as E951, is 9/11. The famous Porsche 9/11. J.C. Penney's, JCP 137 equals 11, and the red square 954 is red equals 18 is 9, 9/11. This picture really needs no explanation. That is an illuminated pyramid with a 6-pointed star. Walmart is 95911. W is 5, A is 1, L is 3. That's 9. MA is 5, and RT is 9/11. RT News is 92, which is 9/11. Many times you don't even need to convert the letters to numbers. They just put the numbers right on the screen. Pawn Stars has a 92 football jersey, and the address is 713, which adds to 11. Bart Simpson's 9/11 prediction. The Office, address 9/11. The movie Cars, 9 and 5. The movie Airplanes, 23, which is 5. South Park, 68531 equals 23, which reduces to 5. 2.5 Men, 23. World Series of Poker, 32. That 70s Show address, 2120, which equals 5. 30 Shrimp for $11.99. 32 equals 5. Tanning, saws, insurance, cereal, orange juice, pumpkin pie, Christmas decorations, computers, clothing, airlines, tools, towels, credit, car commercials, lipstick, guitar pedals. That's why Windows System 32 crashes. Bing equals 23 equals 5. Apple and the evil eye. Dish soap. Discover, the Indianapolis 500 winner gets $2.3 million. The Denver Zoo elephant exhibit, red 11, 932, 50. Abracadabra is 5 in syllables. Deceive the rainbow, open happiness, abracadabra. Every movie you watch will be plastered with secret society numbers. 523, 923 is when the murder occurs on day 68. Warhorse, lot 23. Argo is 9 and 5, January 23rd, and 47.7 is 7/11. Abracadabra. In Rise of the Guardians, the good kid is 11, the bad kid is 5. XFB is 662, which is 14, which is 5, and they all take the Masonic oath to the Masonic G. Secret society members indoctrinate their children at age 5, and Dora is 9/11, 4691. The Wizard of Oz is the ultimate indoctrination film. 68 equals 5. 11 Jersey, 9/11 gas price. Kevin is 1195, and they threw in the Illuminati symbols. Ghostbusters, Stay Puffed is 9/11. The Masonic obelisks, just like Washington, D.C. and the Vatican, these symbols and numbers are in every movie. The Olympic rings, 5, 2 and 3. 2 planes, 3 buildings. And this hit the Pentagon, R2, 9/11. Now you know why 9/11 was done on 9/11. Just like the previous advertisements, 9/11 was an advertising to secret society members to keep people asleep. That's why the buildings look like an 11. Towers also represent knowledge. NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, is 9/11. N is 5, D is 4, which is 9. A is 1, A is 1. NDAA is 9/11. 9/11 2001 adds up to 14, which equals 5. 5 represents chaos, the Masonic compass and square, using opposite sides to achieve their goal. Freemasons did 9/11. The two most important things that Adam Weishaupt did when he reinvented the Illuminati was, one, to put all businesses into corporations, from the word corpse as in a dead entity, so that they would no longer have nationality differences between the secret societies. And the second thing was to include everybody in secret societies rather than exclude. That's why these numbers are everywhere. Pizza, hamburgers, milk, painkillers, tools, clocks, sandals, entitlements, cable TV, cars, Snuggies, beds, and basketballs. Did you know that the official size of the NBA basketball is 29.5 inches? Referee 23. All professional sports leagues are secret societies. Highways 61 and 49. 9/11. The infamous crossroads where musicians sell their souls to the devil to make it. Pink, John Lennon, Pearl Jam, Rihanna, Lil Wayne. And if they can't control you, they kill you. That is why the Recording Industry Association of America is 9911, which is 9/11. November 11th, 9/11, 2 p.m., 11. The 92-story Trump Tower. World Trade Centers, 110 stories. The numeric language is everywhere. Courtrooms, newspapers, CNBC, commercials, everything controlled by Freemasonry. The Vatican controls religion, London, finance, and Washington, war. Look at all the wars the United States has started. And USA, 311-32. Freemasonry is a fungus on earth. The Bible says take no oaths. They take an oath to serve Lucifer. All of these hand signs are the same, 2 and 3, 5, as in I plead the fifth. To be one, ask one. To be one is 5, ask one, 5. Obama's gun grab, 23 executive actions. LAX shooting, 23. Obamacare, HR 32. 32 is everywhere. Freemasonry is fascism. These fools aren't fixing anything. They're laughing at us. There's a plot in this country to enslave every man, woman, and child. Before I leave this office, I intend to expose this plot. JFK wanted to abolish the Federal Reserve because he knew it made us all debt slaves. The Federal Reserve is not even federal. It's a private bank. And the IRS is an unconstitutional collection agency. Why do you think the 1040 EZ is 10-4, which is 5? Henry Ford said, "It is well that the people of the nation do not understand our banking or monetary system, for if they did, I believe there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning." Lincoln said, "I have two great enemies, the Southern Army in front of me and the bankers in the rear. Of the two, the one at my rear is my greatest foe." Secret society numbers and symbols are everywhere. All of these organizations are secret societies, and all of their charities are used for black market banking and bribery. All controlled by Freemasonry, all satanic. Here's Jay-Z with a t-shirt depicting Satan sodomizing Jesus. They worship the all-seeing eye of Lucifer. They corrupt all religions, 95 theses. They worship money, murdered truth and love, and have never stopped serving Lucifer as they conjure demons with the great hope that the fallen angel will rise from the ashes like the phoenix. This is the real war. Do not let them chip your child, but share the secret. Secret societies are evil, and the numeric language and their symbols tie them all together. They will not teach you this in school. Study and share this language, for the world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch and do nothing. It's all in the numbers and the symbols, and it's all the proof we need to expose and eradicate these secret societies. If you are in a secret society, now would be a good time to repent. Learn this language and share this video. Good luck and God bless.
Yeah, Armun. As soon as he got into the JFK was going to abolish the Federal Reserve, I was like, was he?
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, and there's another aspect to this as well that needs to be taken into account, which is he spent the entire video, and listen, his depiction of the numerology is, I have nothing to say against, but he spent the entire video warning against the numbers and saying you have to know the numbers. So which one is it, right? Because one thing is, okay, you read, he says expose, you read the code, and then you do what, right?
Good point. Sometimes I wonder if all these are kind of initiators of the truther crowd.
Precisely.
Like, you know exactly what you're saying there, right? Like they introduce people into these concepts so that, like breadcrumbs, you dive deeper and deeper yourself, and without knowing, you're initiating yourself into these occult knowledges and
Yes, precisely.
mhm.
And the difference between, for example, the whether we call it auto hoax or deprogram or whatever perspective, off the world stage perspective, is that when you observe, you do not participate. Because one of the things that he says is, oh, you know, JFK, like you said, or they're eating, what was it, children or whatever in McDonald's or something like that.
Yeah.
And you are basically led to participate, to fight a war, to engage in one of the polarities of the conflict. Because on the other side, there will be, this obviously comes from what is named the right, right? And on the other side, there will be leftists who are shown videos of the opposite, right? Saying that, you know, the numerology is on the other side, and it's, I don't know, the capitalists or the whatever, it doesn't matter, right? And basically, it's to form the conflict. And it is really essential to understand the role of fakery. And that's why I've tried to present how I view the psyche to work in the latest video I did, and across several conversations I've recorded, to really emphasize how important it is to understand the fakery. Because once we understand the fakery, we do not partake in the actual motion that we are being led to, right? Whether that is a conflict, whether that is an acceptance of something, it always leads us to take some sort of position. And it is really the opposite. If we want to not make it work, we have to step aside, or step outside, better said, of the entire game, right?
Well said.
And there is an organic reality that we are not perceiving. You understand? One of the things that, for example, has been associated, and I've been there for years, so you know, I'm not talking as if I don't know what it is. I have been there in this opinion for years. There is something that is usually associated with the currents of Gnosticism, which is the idea of the simulation, right? That we live in a simulated world, and so it's sort of like the Matrix, right? Like the movie, where we are hooked up somewhere, and basically everything is just simulated for us. I have come to observe that there is an actual organic reality, but is not experienced. And it is not experienced, it's in the same place, right? But it's not experienced due to our perception. And that perception is commanded by false memories, right? Do you remember? Well, you probably don't remember because being Muslim, you probably didn't read much of the Bible. But there's a passage, and if there are any Bible knowers in the chat, help me out which passage it is. But there is a passage where Christ says that the kingdom of the Father, or the kingdom of God, is underneath every stone and is everywhere, etc.
No, I'm not familiar with that verse, but yeah, it sounds like something in the Bible.
Yes. And what basically, the way I always read that is it's here, but you don't see it, right? It's right in the same place where you are, in that you can see with your body as you are, but something is preventing you from seeing it, right? And that something is a virtual reality that is perception in its quality. You know, it's about the perception. We see the world as something different from what it is. And if we are to really have a shot, because it's not guaranteed, but if we are to have a chance of seeing that organic reality, or using this man's words to see God's creation, right? We need to first clear out the false memories. And for that, we need to re-examine them. And it is often not easy to do because we are attached to, go tell this guy, for example, go tell him that they are not eating babies and JFK wasn't a fighter for truth, and see how he reacts, because he's attached to that idea, right? So he would not let go of that idea to then see things from a different perspective. So whether it's something that is good for us or bad for us, if it's pleasant or unpleasant, we are attached. We are like hooked to ideas that we carry with us that came in when we weren't filtering, because our egos were weakened at those times, and often they still are. And so things got into our memory banks that were treated as true when they were just ideas. And we just treat them as true, and they work as foundations for our behaviors and for our perspectives, you see. So it is really essential, yes, to know the way they communicate, sure. To know the numerology, yes. To decode it, okay. But what to do with it is sorry? But what to do with it is to, in my opinion, remove its power. Not to act and go and fight and tell others and what. No, it's to remove its power over you, right? It's to remove, in the same way that an exorcist, right? And I'm not saying that it's real or false, but it's there. In the manual of exorcism, it says that if you are able to identify the name of the demon, it loses power over you.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
This is symbolic. You know the name of the demon in the sense that you recognize what it is. And by recognizing the mere fact that you recognize, it removes its power over you, right? Oh, I know what you're trying to do. And there it goes, right? So, yeah, that would be my comments about this video. It's very interesting in terms of reading the language of numbers, because it is there and it is used, I have no doubts. And they use it in several, all the layers, I would say, of everything that they present. But then what to do with it, I disagree, in my opinion.
Yeah, I also agree that they have sort of like a signature watermark and a language that only they know, and they use numbers and combinations of things and colors and stuff like that to signal to one another. But Armunn, thank you so much, my brother. You always add an insightful layer to, you know. a very, you can say, almost elementary truth drop, which was what, the besides the whole exposing the neurological aspect of their coding and symbology. So here is, I think this will be the final video, but there's more if we have the time for it. It is Friday night after all. This video, I believe the creator is a Black Hebrew Israelite. So as you can see, I use information from wherever I find them. But the reason I'm pulling this video up is, again, he dives deep into the historical foundation of the United States of America. So let's have a listen.
Praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rakwah double honors to my teachers, the apostles of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect who are the house of David, reborn again. And Shalom to the 130 Yasharallah.
So don't mind his
Latinos, and Native
religious
Indians.
chants. We are not Hebrew Israelites here. We're here for the
Israelites of the Holy Bible.
educational aspect.
In today's lesson, I want to go ahead and touch upon the whore of Babylon.
After that, I remind me to ask you a question about that, by the way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You're more than welcome. I believe this is a 25-minute long
Mystery
video.
Babylon the Great, and the whore that sits upon her and where that comes from. Now, before I do that, I want to go ahead and get into a scripture that refers to the whore of Babylon and a warning to our people to stop in her ways, to stop following the path of her spiritual fornication, because it's going to lead to your death. Now, this is Revelations 18:3. For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. And the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she has rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works. In the cup which she hath filled, fill to her double. Now, that her in that scripture is referring to the whore of Babylon. Now, here in America, or what I'm going to refer to as Mystery Babylon the Great, we know her as Lady Liberty, and some of you may know her as Columbia. Right? She even has her own place here in Mystery Babylon, known as the District of Columbia. Well, you see, Mystery Babylon has fooled many people around the world, especially the people.
So
that
Columbia
live
is a
in
female
the
name,
States.
according to him. Interesting.
They have told a lie saying that America is a Christian nation, which it is not. It follows pagan religion. It's a when it elects presidents, it initiates them in a ritual known as Apollo Rising, which invokes the spirit of Nimrod or Osiris into them. You also have the veneration of Osiris's wife, known as Isis, or when you go further back, Nimrod's wife, called Semiramis, who ultimately throughout history has always been worshipped by different names. You've known her as the goddess Diana in the Roman Empire. You've known her as Dagon in from the Hamites, the true Africans. She's been known as you see here, Lady Liberty, and so many other names. The Virgin Guadalupe, Mother Mary, the Virgin Mother Mary, that is, not the Messiah's mom. But you see, this woman who is represented by the Statue of Liberty here is really a spiritual entity which has been concocted by these witches and warlocks of Babylon, Mystery Babylon here in America, them being known as the Chaldeans. You see, this video clip of this guy called Tom Hartman, he is going to explain to you how America was really founded upon pagan beliefs, and they even they invented a goddess, this goddess being Columbia. I'm going to let you watch this video so you can explain it.
But, you know, when somebody says that, you know, the founders wanted America to be a Christian country, I have to challenge that. It's not true.
Well, I mean, if you look back into history, it kind of looks that way, actually.
Twice in the Constitution. In the Constitution, Josh, twice it says once there should be no religious test for office, and once that freedom of religion, including freedom from religion, shall be absolute. I mean, you know, you've got the Establishment Clause and you've got the First Amendment to the Constitution.
Everywhere you look in America, even on our money statues, it talks about God, or everywhere.
Well, that was in 1956. In God We Trust was put on our coins by Dwight Eisenhower in response to pressure from the John Birch Society to defy the godless communists in the Soviet Union.
I think this clip is from RT.
Right.
This guy was
was
a presenter for RT Russia Today.
They put a goddess.
Isn't it funny how they
invented
claim
a
the
goddess.
Russians
I mean, that's as
are the
pagan
enemy, but
as
they
you can
had
get.
RT
The
in
founders,
American
Ben
broadcasting?
Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, and there was another one, maybe it was George Mason. There were three of them. They got together and they said, you know, America has.
Wow, that's a great
because they
point,
were modeling the American
Socrates.
Republic on the Greek democracy.
Did
and
you know
Roman
the
Republic,
Statue of
right?
Liberty was
And
actually
they
meant
said,
for
you know, the
Egypt?
Greeks had gods and goddesses. The Romans had gods and goddesses. We have gods, male gods, right? The religion, the Christian and Jewish gods, but we have no goddesses. So let's invent a goddess for the United States. And they literally invented a goddess out of whole cloth. They named her after the guy who discovered the continent, Columbus. And they put her on the top of the Capitol building. They said that no building in Washington, D.C. could be taller than her head. Her name is Columbia. Columbia Rising, you know, they put her on our currency. She has been on the Columbia walking silver dollar was minted right up until the 1980s. Reagan was the one who took the goddess off our currency. 200 years of that, Josh. She's in front of the the Department of Justice. John Ashcroft covered up her naked breast, remember, famously? She's out there with a blindfold and the scales. She's in front of the Defense Department, in one hand holding a shield, and another hand holding a quiver or a bundle of arrows. She's in front of the Agriculture Department with scythe, you know, to harvest wheat. Every department uses the goddess. She's on our flags. They named the center of government for the United States after the goddess. They said and this district is going to be dedicated to Columbia, the goddess, the District of Columbia. And like I said, no building can be taller than her head, and no person who lives in the district can engage in partisan activity like voting. That's why the District of Columbia doesn't have representation in Congress. Talk about pagan religions. Back to you, Josh.
You know, I hear all that. I just wish the two parties to get along better. I mean,
oh yeah, I'm all in favor of that.
As you can see, Tom Hartman's counter argument partner here isn't all that versed in these matters and shit, can't really speak on it. But as Tom was saying, Columbia is the pagan goddess that these founding fathers created. Now, they didn't create her from scratch. They used goddesses from historic past, right? And it ultimately all goes back to, you know, Diana, and basically ultimately Semiramis, who is ultimately the moon goddess. Right, here's the District of Columbia. District of Columbia has this section here. This part here is called Alexandria. Right, it's when this place was created, it was created to be um, a weapon of mysticism, right? Of magical powers, because what you haven't been told by your government is that they are witches and they're Satanists, and they use the powers of the left side to gain control. This is why they laid out the District of Columbia. This right here is the White House, right here. Then you got other points here, and down here you got the Pentagon. Notice that the Pentagon points directly to the center of this Pentagon, right? And it kind of just all aligns. And there's so many more hidden symbols in here, and mysticism, and it's all was planned out by these devils. These devils here, they are known for practicing what's known as Freemasonry. Now, when you get past all the lies and deceptions, Freemasonry ultimately is the harnessing and worshiping of Lucifer, Salaki, of Satan. These people would be considered Lucifer, the Luciferians on earth doing, or what they refer to them as light bearers, right? But the truth is that the prophets of the Lord are the true Luciferians. They're the true light bearers. They have the true light. These guys simply have a form of light, but it's the light from the left side. Now, they do this. They did this so that way they could build their new world order. This was coined. This idea was coined by a past Freemason. Back then, they didn't call them Freemasons. They called them Rosicrucians. But his name was Francis Bacon, and he created. He wrote a book called the New Atlantis. Because you see, these Freemasons, they believe in the past world civilization known as Atlantis, and from there comes a lot of these pagan beliefs and all this stuff that these devils want to recreate in this world. But again, they're not going to get to it because they're going to be destroyed. Well, ultimately, these are the new devils that control the world, right? The deceivers. These are the money masters of our world, and they use religion, money, military influence, and all these organizations here, plus many more, to make up the world that you know. They do this through, like I was just showing you, the city of Washington D.C., District of Columbia, which they've invoked a spiritual goddess that goes all the way back to Isis, along with these other city states to reign from, and to rule the world in how it sees fit. Now, this goddess, like I said, she goes back to Semiramis, who goes back to the being the wife of Nimrod. Nimrod being the first king after the flood, who lived about 200 years after when the flood happened, and who created the Tower of Babel, which ultimately was the conjoining of all what was known as the nations in the world at that time to come up against God. Now, the devils of today, they're coming together to build a new world order. And in doing so, they're harnessing the power of the left side. These pagan rituals, Satanist rituals, all this type of stuff. Well, all these things that are being done here in Babylon the Great are manifesting into the spiritual goddess or the spiritual entity, right? Which is going out and it's basically swallowing people's morals up, right? Making them a slave spiritually to these people, man. And what I mean by that is, you got feminists out there, right? They've been indoctrinated with the beliefs or the wine of the whore of Babylon. So they now have feminist beliefs, and they go off and, you know, they end up shaving their head, not wanting to have kids or get married, and, you know, they become a total waste. But let me go ahead and read to you the part that describes the whore of Babylon. So let me actually start here. Let's start. Where's Let me start. So this is Revelations 17:3. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-covered beast. Now that scarlet-covered beast is the
So once
NATO,
again,
or the
we
beast.
don't
NATO being the
subscribe
European
to
countries who have come
the scriptures
together
he's quoting. We're just using him
to
as
join America in ruling the
knowledge
world.
bank.
Right? Full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color. Purple meaning rulership, dominion, also scarlet meaning sins and basically blasphemy, right? And decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations, the filthiness of her fornication, and upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and the blood of the martyrs of Yahushua. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. You see, John here, you know, he was he desired Salaki. He desired that image of that whore, right? Because, you know, this Babylonian lifestyle, this, you know, living here in the whore of Babylon, in Babylon the Great, it's a very
Hey, Armunn, there's a.
alluring
Oh,
system,
okay, you saw
man.
the question.
You could do things you want to do here, right? You could you know, there's people who go on drug benders, they go on sexual benders, they, you know, all wickedness is to be had here in Babylon, and all it costs you is your soul, you know. And a lot of people don't even understand the science of soul, so, you know, they're all about this place, man. If they don't do moral wickedness, they, you know, they do wickedness through, unbeknownst to them, by, you know, not looking into the truth of the Bible, not worshiping God, you know, pursuing a career and making that their God, right? Going after sports and making that their idol, right? This place, this you know, Mystery Babylon the Great, it is a place of great spiritual defilement, right? And this is the kingdom of the Edomites, right? The
So if
Edomites
you're a
being
Muslim
so-called
listener,
Caucasians,
keep this in
who
mind. A Christian is admitting
is going
that
to be the
America
last
is not a Christian
heathen
environment.
nation
So what
that
does
will
that
be in
mean for
rulership
us
at the end
Muslims?
time. You see, when you read the Bible, you're told about the 17 nations that currently rule the world. I'm Salaki. The 18 nations that inhabit the world. Israel, being the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Indians, is one of the nations, making the 17 other nations the heathen nations. Now, every one of these nations have had a chance to rule since the time of Adam and Eve. You know, it might have been a small empire. And also, it could have been a long empire, right? The Elamites, or Elam, who ultimately it goes back, is also the Persian empires within there. They had a good long rulership, along with the Ethiopians, who would have been the original Babylonians, right? So every one of these nations had a chance to rule. Now we are in the last captivity under the Edomites, last empire, before the empire which will last forever, which is ruled by the Lord, and also the Israelites, being the Negroes, Latinos, Native Indians, which is this empire, which is going to come, is going to be established forever. Now, see. So let's get back to this. So, and the angel said unto me, Wherefore dost thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. The bottomless pit is there in Europe, right? Which is where all these nations, well, basically the current Edomite stronghold is strong right now, right? It says, and goeth into perdition, meaning destruction, which means this place is going to be destroyed ultimately. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose name were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. Right? So people of the world are going to wonder after this ruling power of the world. You know? But as it tells you, man, it describes, like, here's a image or a depiction of this, but there's a better depiction that GMS came out with. Now this right here basically shows you what the beast is and the horror that sits upon her. Now, you see, the world is currently under the rulership of the beast, right? That being the Caucasian race. All these nations here have all been, and in fact all nations around the world have been infiltrated by the Edomite race, right? Just as you have Israel, who is in every race, you're also going to have Edom, who is going to be, who has infiltrated into every race. So this is why you're going to have Edomites who are going to look just like every other nation, and also you're going to have Israelites that look like other nations. Man, this is, tells you that in Revelations and also in 2nd Ezra about the peaceful multitude from all nations and all tongues, right? And then you just know by history that Esau, Edom that is, has basically slept with all the people of the world, man. This is why you're going to have tares inside of the nation of Israel, because their fathers goes back to the lineage of Esau. And the same thing goes for the people of Ammon, and also Moab, being the Japanese and Chinese and so forth, man. Just because Edom, because he's in rulership, has this pick of the litter of all the women around the world. But yeah, so let me go ahead and get to this scripture, because ultimately this kingdom that was set up with its own goddess Columbia, who ultimately goes back, and it's a copy of the goddess Isis, who was just a woman who decided to try to make herself a god, but she ended up dying, and but you had devils who kept venerating her and kept worshiping the idea. Where all this is ultimately going to cease, because all these gods that these deceivers around the world make, they're not gods. They're simply just figments of their imaginations, and ultimately worship of demons. Now, when these demons depart from the side of Edom, their kingdom is going to be destroyed. Now, that's going to happen when the Lord comes back and puts Edom down, and Babylon the Great down, right? And tells you here, this is Jeremiah 16:14. Therefore, behold, the day comes, saith Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, that it shall no more be said, the Lord liveth that brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But the Lord liveth that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, and from all of the lands whither he had driven them. And I will bring them again into their land that I gave unto their fathers. And then tells you, it says, behold, I will send many fishers, saith the Lord, and they shall fish them. And after I will send for many hunters, and they shall hunt them from every mountain and from every hill, out of the holes of the rocks, For mine eyes are upon all their ways. They are not hid from my face, neither is their iniquity hid from mine eyes. So you see, the coming destruction of the District of Columbia, of the horror that sits upon the beast, and the beast itself is coming soon, right? You see, like in the movies where they always try to make fun of those people on the sides holding those sandwich boards and saying the end is near. Well, the end is near, people. We are on the brink of World War III. It only is gonna take a few more events for that thing to pop off. The mark of the beast is already being implemented around the world. Again, it's just a matter of time for it to be mandatory here in the States. You can see them changing laws. The New World Order is already getting pushed into place, but it's being done incrementally, so that way you don't know, you can't perceive it and do anything about it. This is all happening by passing of mandatory IDs, mandatory vaccination, laws on health, a ban on farming, collecting rainwater, things like this, man. Because they're ultimately, these devils want to destroy 7 billion people on this world and only have 500 million. So that way they could live in what they would in their own utopia. But as the Bible says, the Lord's going to throw a monkey wrench into their machine and destroy it, and he's going to save his people. At first, it's only going to be the 144,000 elect Israelites and 1/3 of the Israelites. These being 1 out of every 3 Negroes, Latinos, and Native Indians. Either Israelites who know the truth, know the Lord's names, knows the Messiah's names, does the best they can, keeping the commandments, and the Lord has predestined them to survive the coming world destruction of World War III, Jacob's trouble, and so forth. And the rest of Israel ultimately will be reborn and come back into a world which is ruled by the Negroes, Latinos, Native Indians, along with the Messiah, along with Lord. So that way it's going to be basically heaven on earth. Everything's going to be in a perfect balance. So the time's coming up quick, people. If you're watching this video, and if you haven't made it out to a camp yet, please look up your closest Great Millstone camp in your town or close to you, and make it out. Just listen to the word, get that mark of salvation, and because time is running out, people. So I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem Ruach HaKodesh, double honors to my teachers, the Apostle Great Millstone, and peace and mercy to the elect, and Shalom.
Okay, Bach, I would like to ask you a question if possible. Can you hear me? Oh, okay, you're away. All right. Yeah. Well, actually, what I would like to do next is to ask you a question, but I'll wait for your return. Yes, well, this seems to be playing into the racial division that we were talking about earlier, and there have been several movements that promote this from either side, black versus white, Christian versus Muslim, whatever. Because it's not just, of course, racial, it's religious, it's in all polarities that can be found, even, of course, man versus woman. So even gender division. And the idea is to bring them to an extreme, so that then in a shock therapy of sorts, which isn't actually therapy, it's basically trauma, induced trauma. In one simple and effective, aggressive strike, let's say, of trauma, all those emotions that came about in that extreme, in those extreme polarities, are basically taken out, and the people that were holding them become sort of traumatized, empty vessels, let's say, devoid of, as I was saying, of egos, devoid of individuality, and then accept a new external guidance that decides for them. So I think that that is the ultimate idea. And what this guy was presenting, in my opinion, was one side of the polarity from his perspective. Others would point from the opposite perspective, and they would conflict each other and they would fight each other, let's say, if they were to debate. But ultimately, they are reinforcing the central point, and the central point is the false dichotomy, the false duality. That
I'm back. Sorry
through
about that,
the
Armin.
yeah, that through the um, heightening of this perceived position in opposition to another, because it's like it's like, and this is applicable to all religions. It's as if the people that worship God in certain ways uh, worship God in relation to the devil, because they see the world as a world of conflict, right?
100%.
So it would be like, I worship God to save me from the devil, or to defeat the devil, or because the devil does this and that, right? They don't do it because they think it's good. They do it because there's a war and they choose what they think is the correct side. So once that is the perspective, um, things get heightened in a conflict. And if they are able to apply a trauma that afflicts, that actually traumatizes, let's say, afflicts, like shock therapy, um, all those involved, they will all lose their volition, because everything is basically taken out. Imagine that you see two people fighting each other, and you get there and you basically hammer them with something, and they both are like in that daze, right? They forget about the fight, but they also forget about themselves, and they also forget about anything else, because all of a sudden there's this other element that basically bashed them in the head and traumatized them, and basically took over, right, while they were fighting each other. So everything is lost. That is my perspective. But the question that I wanted to ask you, Bach, is,
Yes.
because this guy was apparently a representative of Black Israelites. But I also have observed, and I've actually seen many of those channels years and years ago.
Same, yeah.
Yeah, the Black Islam of
Yeah, the
the
Nation of
U.S.,
Islam.
the Nation of Islam. Yeah,
Correct.
that's what it's called. Yes. What is your opinion on those guys?
I've done a deep dive on the Nation of Islam. It is okay. Uh, it all goes back to this one guy, and his name was Wallace Fard Muhammad. Wallace Fard Muhammad. Uh, the Black Americans in Chicago did not have an idea where he was from. He just kind of showed up out of the blue one day. But I've done a deep dive on this guy, and
Hmm.
he basically groomed Elijah Muhammad. Elijah Muhammad was kind of the founding father of the Nation of Islam, and Elijah Muhammad then went on to groom, the famous people we all know, Malcolm X and Luis Farrakhan, who's still alive to this day, and he's the one who's basically uh, given a million plus congregation. He's allowed to say all the anti-Semitic things most other people will be condemned for saying. Here is what the Nation of Islam are. This guy was a Indian. He was a Punjabi Indian from India, and he was from the Ahmadiyya community. Many in the chat who are Muslim, people like Sting, they know exactly who the Ahmadiyya are. So the Ahmadiyya were a British Empire psyop in India, in like what is now Pakistan, India, and whatnot. And what they did was they found a guy named Mirza Ghulam, and exactly like the Mormon guy, John Smith, exactly like who was also another British Empire agent, exactly like uh, they had a bunch of these guys. They had one in China called who started something called the Boxer Rebellion. But anyways, this guy Mirza Ghulam, he basically started off normal mainstream Sunni Muslim scholar, and was a missionary da'i, spreading the faith. And then suddenly he claimed he was the Messiah. He was the incarnation of Jesus, and he claimed Jesus became reincarnated in 19th century Punjab, right? So nobody took him seriously except his community, and they were a community called Qadian, and it's in India. And the rest of the Muslims called him a heretic and called his followers Qadianis. But the British propped him, right? And to this day, the Ahmadiyya community, whether in the United Kingdom, whether here in Canada, they're always propped up. A good example of the Ahmadiyya, there was this one guy, he died, but he converted to Christianity. His name was Nabil something. He was a Ahmadiyya guy, but he always presented himself to his Christian flock as an ex-Muslim. He wasn't a Muslim. He was Ahmadiyya. So, anyways, back to the Nation of Islam. This guy, he was kind of like I'm talking about Wallace Dean Muhammad. He was kind of like a con artist, Punjabi guy, and he was all over the British. He lived all over the British Empire. Uh, I found stuff about him living in New Zealand and then being deported, and that's how he ended up in America. And when he ended up in America, because he was kind of a brown guy, he kind of mingled more with the African American community, and that's where he spread Islam. But he was tasked with making Islam seem like he was only a colored only religion, so that the majority mainstream white Americans always associate Islam with African Americans, and it would never become like a mainstream religion in Islam in the United States, because they saw the storm clouds gathering, right? They knew that they were going to bring in Muslim migrants and whatnot. They were bringing in, after the Marshall Plan, the U.S. State Department was the ones who imposed migrants in your neck of the woods in Europe, right? So they knew post 19, and they even legislated in the Immigration Acts, the 1965 Naturalization Act amendment, where they basically, for the first time in American history, allowed people from Africa, Asia, and the classic third world to migrate to the US. So they wanted to make sure Islam would not pick up, would not be something that was trending in mainstream America, in middle America. So they pushed this Nation of Islam cult, and they made sure it was, a racialized thing, because they benefited from uh, the concept that it was a racial religion, and that was what was in the creed of the Nation of Islam, that there was this scientist called Yaqub who lived in Mecca, and he he created the white man, and it's all nonsense, completely un-Islamic, right?
Right. But so just to clarify, because like I said, I don't know
Mhm.
exactly, is there any reference in Islamic sources, the Quran and so on, of a specific race
Nope, absolutely not.
associated? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no
Mm.
whatsoever. Like racial concept is completely absent in the Quran.
Okay. Yeah, because these the Nation of Islam and those guys were always extremely racist towards not just whites but anyone else.
100%,
So it
yeah.
seemed to, yeah.
Even other African communities, they considered themselves to be Israelites, and they considered Africans to be, Hamites who were cursed. They had the curse of Ham. And
Mhm.
one thing about the Hebrew Israelite cult, they're kind of like the Christian version of the Nation of Islam. The only difference is they stem from the British Israelites, who kind of made the Hebrews into offshoot of the uh, you know, the British Isles as being the destination of the lost tribes of Israel, and it's all complete nonsense and all racialized and all meant to uh, other a group and put one group on a pedestal.
Yeah, yeah, the racial division, racial, religious, all divisions. Yeah,
100%, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so Armin, do you have any final thoughts?
Well, it was a great live stream. I hope I didn't talk your ears off
No, you
when you
were
get me
a
going.
great addition. We should definitely have more. I actually I was hoping, if there was a somebody else was interested in hop on, I was hoping they would. I put the StreamYard link, but I should have
Yeah,
done that.
there was Heinrich wanted to say something about JFK back when he was being mentioned.
Right, right.
And if he still wants to, or
You're more than welcome, Hirish, if you muster the courage to. I don't understand why you'd be nervous, but the StreamYard link is in the general chat. Welcome aboard, Amber. Amber is OG. So I think we basically covered everything. This is just a replay of the other video we watched. If you haven't seen it, the beginning part, this guy just went completely, you know, neurotic with the numbers and with the numerology.
yeah, yeah. And then what you do with it? You go out there and you fight, right? Or you try
Mhm.
to convert other people, which is basically synonymous with fighting. It's like those people
Christopher
that
Columbus. What a piece of
insist
work.
that you have to wake
Largest
people
landowner
up,
in Philly.
in the sense that, yeah, you go and have a meal with your family and you keep trying to convince them of something that you are absolutely certain it's true and they don't see. And what happens is that you cut ties with your family. That is basically what happens. What
So
happens is
true.
that you stop having a family. You stop having that support, that those links, familial links, because everyone will see you as a crazy, you know, a lunatic that
Yeah,
that
not
goes to a nut. Yeah. So that is not the solution. It never was, and it never will be. Even if it would be a fact that you see something they don't, uh, that is no way to do it. Whenever people are ready to ask a question, they will find you. This is something I've experienced myself. Whenever people want to, whenever they are ready, they will ask you a question, and then you answer with the best you've got. But until then, leave them in their space, and you are in yours, and share the common ground that you had to share, and enjoy the beautiful things and the good things that you have. You don't have to agree. Like I said in the beginning of the live stream, I think it was in the beginning of the live stream, or in another live stream, I don't remember.
mhm.
Agreement is overrated. We don't have
Absolutely.
to agree. We are individuals, and sure, we agree on some things, disagree on others, and it's fine. Um, the world isn't a place of complete conflict. There is conflict in the world, but it isn't the only thing that is here. And we shouldn't promote it by our perceptions, right? So
Mhm.
enjoy what we have, enjoy the ties, enjoy your friends, enjoy your family. And if they ask you, if they are curious because of your example, because if you become a good example in what you know, they will ask you questions and then you answer, right?
Then you answer
Don't try
100.
to proselytize. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. A huge shame to you know ruin ties with loved ones or even friends over the disagreements in ideas, ideologies, philosophies, or even something you've heard in the news. And I see that happening all the time, and it's a shame. It's better. Sometimes it's better to not even bring these kind of topics in the dinner table if you think it might cause a bit of tension. That's just my opinion. But thank you so much, Armin. I wanted to, before I end this, I didn't. I did make the error of not playing the beginning part of the original video, the one that was discussing Columbus and a few things, like Armin just said, that I myself don't agree with, the Tartaria stuff. So I'll just replay this. I'll be here in the background. Uh, Armin, I hope you haven't left. And if anyone has any questions, Heinrich, anyone else, you're more than welcome to type them away in the chat. I'll be reading the chat myself. So without further ado, I'm just going to play this. Okay, this is the very beginning.
Acres of land, and in 1773, Francis Salvador was the largest landowner in his district in South Carolina.
This is the leading Jewish citizen of Rhode Island, Alvin Lopez. He's also a merchant. He's also the wealthiest man in Rhode Island. Here's Abigail Levy Franks herself. And first of all, notice she's wearing blue. Blue is by far the most expensive color to have on your clothing in the 18th century.
Jews had tremendous assets in society which forced people to pay attention and respect to them. It was this overwhelming majority of the upper and middle class Jews that led to a significant Jewish presence in the fraternity of Freemasons. Freemasonry, especially during the colonial era, was almost exclusively for men of rank, the urban elites. So we can see Jews in early America were certainly prolific, and no coincidence there, because going back to the Alhambra degree, it's quite evident that many Jews, in fact, the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria, were probably almost exclusively filled with Jews, including their gold and silver. So no coincidence that in early colonial America we find highly wealthy Jews, a large number of them, and that they're all involved with the elite group of people called Freemasonry. And we can see that there's certainly a number of Jewish elites in the ranks of Freemasonry, and that is evidenced by early membership records. So let's look further into the relationship between Jews and Freemasons in the 18th and 19th century. And we can also analyze the Masonic organization at a number of levels and its intersection with Judaism. Interestingly, as we already know, the Jews in America is linked to Christopher Columbus because of the Edict of Exposition, which was published on March, and it gave the Jews until July to leave Spain. Because they weren't allowed to bring gold, silver, coin, money, it is largely thought that the money the Jews were required to leave behind went in part to funding Columbus's journey. So because the Alhambra decree was issued in March, they had all the way until July or truly August 3rd to spend all of their money on the boats, food, and materials necessary to relocate from Spain to a land of the free, or a land of the Freemasons, where they would be safe to practice their Freemasonry when other countries were kicking them out. Now, there were 300,000 Jews who were living in Spain in 1492, so obviously not all of them could fit on the boats. It would have been the elite, the richest ones, of course, who would have been able to purchase their way onto the boat in the form of providing financial assistance for the journey to the land of the Freemason. The Jews who arrived in America tended to be wealthy and well-connected. They had occurred a number of contracts across European countries, which gave them advantage in business and trade. And this is why many of them became merchants and shopkeepers when they came to America. Their professions tended to place them in the middle and upper classes, and thus the Jewish population in America tended to be in the upper class. The Freemasons were an elite organization made up primarily of middle and upper class males, so the Jews fit in right there. And while the organization didn't start in America, American lodges developed their own character and made significant contributions to society as a whole. The origins for Freemasonry is not known for certain, and Freemasonry is a male fraternal order, not an association of stone layers. The Brotherhood has a connection with sociability and science. Why science? We'll look into that a little bit further, but traditionally you wouldn't think about Freemasonry as a group of scientists. But in fact, I do believe they are a group of scientists and physicists, and there's a lot of evidence to that. In 1723, the Masonic constitutions were published and quickly became a canonical Masonic text. And let's note that what came first, was it the Masonic Constitution or the Constitution of the United States? And of course, it was the Masonic Constitution that came first of 1723. And after that, they said, hey, this worked great for our Freemasonry and our land of the Freemason. We need one for that as well. We're going to call it the Constitution of the United States. And that came much later in 1789. By the 1760s, Americans had broken with the orthodoxy of the Grand Lodge and its official history. This was the shift from the moderns to the ancients. Somewhat counterintuitively, the moderns are the older form of Masonry, and the ancients are the newer form. By the time the American Grand Lodges were formed after the American Revolution, 55% of them claimed that they had come from ancient lodges, showing that ancient Masonry had firmly established itself in the colonies. However, ancient Masonry was not the only variation that found a home in American colonies. Organizations that utilized symbolic Masonry formed, including the York Rite and Scottish Rite groups, which are characterized by their own hierarchical systems. The Scottish Rite, also referred to as perfect and sublime Masonry, or later known as ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, emerged through the ancients as a system of higher degrees or rankings. The Scottish Rite innovation initially introduced 25 degrees and would eventually have 33. For the purposes of this video, it's important to understand the place of Scottish Rite in America, since it's the type of Masonry with a distinct connection to American Jews. Now, it's appropriate that this thesis comes out of the University of Pennsylvania because Philadelphia, the enlightened colonial city, was the mother city of symbolic Masonry in the Western world and was the revival site for perfect and sublime Masonry, allowing it to become the active, ancient, and accepted Scottish Rite. It was also here that symbolic Masonry became established in the Jewish community and spread through them and across the United States. It is from this point we can begin to establish the connections between Judaism and Masonry in America. And ultimately, although it sounds surprising that many of the early Jews in America were Masons, upon further investigation, it would be more surprising if they weren't. The Star of David, the Seal of Solomon. For the modern Jew, the most recognizable symbol is probably the Star of David. This six-sided star, or hexagram, which has 6 vertices, 6 edges, with an interior angle of 60, or 666, often called a Jewish star, appears on the flag of the State of Israel, a country created to be a nation for the Jews. However, the exclusivity as a Jewish symbol is a modern development. The Star of David was used as early as the Bronze Age, and in its magical applications, it's normally referred to as the Seal of Solomon, referring to the son of King David, the biblical king known for his wisdom. The star was said to have magical properties, and its inscription on the signet of Solomon was said to give him access to the genius that helped him build his temple. Here we have an encyclopedia of Freemasonry and its kindred sciences, and a pretty nice looking book, the square and compass on the inside, but let's look at page 674. The Seal of Solomon, or the Shield of David, is a hexagonal figure consisting of 2 interlacing triangles, thus forming the outlines of a 6-pointed star. Upon it was inscribed one of the sacred names of God, from which inscription it was supposed principally to derive its talismanic powers. These powers were very extensive, for it was believed that it would extinguish fire, prevent wounds in a conflict, and perform many other wonders. The Jews called it the Shield of David in reference to the protection which it gave them, but to the other Orientalists it was more familiarly known as the Seal of Solomon. Among these people there is a very prevalent belief in the magical character of the King of Israel. He was esteemed rather as a great magician than as a great monarch, and by the signet which he wore, on which this talismanic seal was engraved, he is supposed to have accomplished the most extraordinary actions, and by it to have enlisted into his service the labors of the genii for the construction of his celebrated temple. Robinson Crusoe and the 1001 Nights are 2 books which every child has read, and which no man or woman ever forgets. In the later, there are many allusions to Solomon's Seal. Especially, there's a story of an unlucky fisherman who has fished up in his net a bottle secured by a leaden stopper on which the seal was impressed. And upon opening it, a fierce, evil genius comes forth, who gives this account of the cause of his imprisonment. Solomon, he said, the son of David exhorted me to embrace the faith and submit to his authority, but I refused. Upon which he called for this bottle and confined me in it, and closed it upon me with this leaden stopper, and stamped upon this seal the great name of God engraved on it. Then he gave the vessel to one of the genii, who submitted to him with orders to cast me into the sea. Did you know that the story of Aladdin with the genie in a bottle was a story about the Star of David and King Solomon? So Solomon's ability to build his temple, which was one of the greatest architectural feats ever, is said to have came from the magical powers of the Star of David. So no surprise we see the magical symbol being discussed here when we're talking about the dollar bill. We have seen the 13 stars above the eagle have been arranged to represent the 2 interlocking triangles, the Seal of Solomon, or the Star of David, a symbol that is widely used in magical text under a variety of magical names. And I would say that the seal being on the US dollar bill has more to do with its magical properties and less to do with just somebody wanting to put some stars on that paper. Now, the Temple of Solomon has specific significance for Masons because they have traced their history back to the stonemasons who worked on it. So the story of King Solomon using the Star of David's magical powers to help him build the temple would have been important to the Freemasons, and that's why we see them still using it to this day. The temple has specific significance for Masons because they trace their history back to the stonemasons who worked on it. That is referenced in 1 Kings chapter 5, verse 15, where Solomon had 70,000 carriers and 80,000 stonecutters in the hill. So this is when he was building his temple, and these 80,000 stonecutters or stonemasons would be the ones that the Freemasons can trace their lineage back to. These are Jews. The people who were building the temple under King Solomon were certainly Jews. And if the Freemasons can trace their lineage back to the stonemasons who worked on King Solomon's temple, aka the 80,000 stonecutters in the hills from First Kings, then they certainly are saying that they are Jews and that their lineage comes from Jews. So there's evidence that Freemasonry and their heritage certainly comes from Jews, and they do believe that they are the ones who built King Solomon's temple. So this story of them using the Star of David or the Seal of Solomon and its magical powers to help them build the temple would be an important story to the Masons. While the star is certainly not one of the most important symbols of Masonry, it does appear in a number of areas, including on seals and as part of the architecture. And I will argue that the star is one of the most important symbols in Freemasonry, and we can see some examples of that easily. Let's take a look at Albert Pike, famous Freemason from the early 1800s, who is a 33-degree Scottish Rite Mason. We can see the eagle like we have on the dollar bill with the 33 here, and again, more double-headed eagle here. But let's take a look at his book, Morals and Dogma, the Ancient Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, and see just what kind of stuff these guys are into. The occult, perhaps? Lucifer, the light bearer. Lucifer, the son of morning. It is he who bears the light. So this guy is, not only is he a 33-degree Mason, but he's also into the occult. We can see it classifies this as 19th century occultists, and you can definitely learn that if you read his book here. But this is not the only book that he wrote. He also wrote this book, Masonic Formulas and Rituals. Now, this is absolutely a book of magic. It's a grimoire, or a book full of spells and rituals. And Albert Pike studied Freemasonry extensively, locked himself into the Masonic temple and the library, and revised all of the Masonic magical spells and rituals into this book. Now, the interesting things here are, of course, what appears to be a sphere Earth. We've got the square and compass, and we have the Star of David. And the all-seeing eye is right here, and another square and compass. So I would say that the second most important symbol to the Freemasons is the Seal of Solomon. Next to the square and compass, this is definitely the most prominent symbol associated with Freemasonry. But I would say number 2 would be the Seal of Solomon. And one example after the next can be found. This is at the Grand Lodge. Let's see, where does it say? The Grand Lodge of the State of Israel. So this is in Israel at the Masonic Grand Lodge. This is the Masonic HQ. There isn't going to be a place in the world that is more Masonic than the Grand Lodge in the State of Israel. And we can see here, of course, that in addition to the square and compass, the other symbol incorporated here is, of course, the Star of David or the Seal of Solomon. And the all-seeing eye. We've got the all-seeing eye, the square and compass, the Seal of Solomon, and for some reason they are symbolizing the Pythagorean theorem here, or perhaps Pythagorean triplets. But do note that there are a few symbols that are very important to the Masons. They can be seen in this picture. It is the all-seeing eye, the square and compass, the Seal of Solomon or the Star of David, the Pythagorean theorem or Pythagorean triplets, and it looks as though a pentagram around the neck. So I do believe that the Star of David or the Seal of Solomon is one of the most important symbols in Freemasonry, and we can see that is clear as day. Historically, in colonial America, one notable example is on the seal of the Charleston Lodge of Perfection. This seal contains a number of Masonic symbols, including the most famous and identifiable one, is square and compass. But in the corner directly above the square and compass, there is the Seal of Solomon. The placement here would seem to indicate a similar regard for the two symbols. In fact, one could argue that the Seal of Solomon is most visible symbol as it's surrounded by a light circle, or the sun, it looks like, against a dark background, while the rest of them all have a dark background. Now, I do want to mention something about this image right here. It's quite an interesting image. And right off the bat, it doesn't seem like there's too much here, but for one, we can see the black and white checkered floor of the lodge, or as they would interpret that as the floor of the King Solomon's temple. Of course, we have the square and compass, the Seal of Solomon. And look at what is going on here. The sun's shining here, and it is going onto this compass. And you can see the shadow from it. And it's the shadows of the stick or the well experiment. And so, once again, I'm wondering why there is such a secret or symbolism here for the Pythagorean theorem, because the Pythagorean theorem was again used by Eratosthenes to prove a spherical Earth. And I'm not going to get into sphere or flat Earth here, but I will notice that there is some kind of a secret from all obtaining that has something to do with a compass and the sun. So not only to this day, but since the very founding of America, we can find the Star of David. Here is the Seal of David, or the Star of Solomon, right next to the square and compass on a fireback from Massachusetts, circa 1756. And a closer look at that, of course, you could see the fireback, square and compass. You could call this a pentagram, I guess, and right next to the Seal of Solomon. In a discussion of objects of Masonic importance that also have Jewish significance, the Temple of King Solomon is probably the most important for the Masons. And I will show that again in this ancient Freemason book, which is written entirely in code. And, well, not entirely. The index is in plain English, I guess. But the majority of this book is written completely in code. So if you would like to read this book, you're going to have to be good at cryptology. And in the back of the book, we can find something that we can actually read here. King Solomon. So we can see how important King Solomon and King Solomon's temple is to the Freemasons. Even the black and white checkered floor that you will find at all Masonic lodges is a reference to King Solomon's temple. Because the Freemasons trace their lineage to the stonemasons who helped build King Solomon's temple, it has particular significance to them. So I don't know how much more clear you need to get on a connection between Freemasonry and Jews when they have traced their heritage back to the Freemasons who built King Solomon's temple in Israel. Now, I've only begun to touch on this thesis, and there is much, much more information to cover. But for the length of the video, I'm going to have to leave the rest of the document up to the reader to learn for themselves. But my final conclusion is that the United States of America is the land of the Freemason, not the land of the free, home of the brave. It's a bunch of nonsense. And when you can't even go grocery shopping without putting a cloth diaper on your head, I don't know why you would call this land of the free, but this is certainly land of the Freemason. And we can see that since the beginning, since Christopher Columbus even came to America, that this all along was a Jewish enterprise. And I believe that they came to America in search for a land that was free, where they could practice Freemasonry without being expelled from countries, which was happening frequently for them. Everywhere the Jews went, they were getting kicked out of countries. And if you look into Freemasonry and its occultic, Luciferian, satanic roots, I can see why that people don't want to have Freemasonry around at all. So when Spain was going to kick them out, they used all their money and loaded up onto 3 boats, the Nina Pinta Santa Maria, and they went sailing to a land that they knew was there because it had already been mapped by Pyrees and all kinds of other people who had been to America. The Tartarians were already there. And when Christopher Columbus got off the boat with full of Jews to their land of the Freemason, where they could freely practice their occultic religion, they were surprised to find Tartarians, and lo and behold, these were the other lost 10 tribes of Israel. So now that we have some of the facts straight about Christopher Columbus, why they came to America, and really truth about the founding of America and how it was founded on Freemasonry, and even the Constitution of the Freemason comes before the Constitution of the United States, So, no surprise that the first president of the United States was a prolific Freemason, and this guy was entrenched in Freemasonry, and all the architecture that they have in places like Washington, D.C. are all Masonic architecture. And this guy even went out to lay the cornerstone of the United States Capitol building on September 18, 1793, which has specific astronomical significance. But we can see here that George Washington was a very infamous Freemason, and all of the U.S. presidents after him were as well. And here we got him with the hand in the coat, or the hidden hand, or they call that the lion's paw, where they put their hand inside of their coat like this. That's certainly a Freemason sign right there. And anytime you're going to speak up or say anything negative about the Jews, of course, you're going to be called an anti-this or an anti-that. But I believe Henry Ford was a smart guy, and it's interesting that he had to write 4 books on the dangers of the international Jew. The International Jew, the World's Problem, was the headline on some papers. And you will see aspects of Jewish power in the United States, Jewish influence on the American life, Jewish activities in the United States, and the International Jew, the World's Foremost Problem. These are all linked to Freemasonry and how Freemasonry needs to be abolished once and for all, and it should not be allowed to exist. It needs to be squashed. So if I was to join any political party, it would not be a Republican or Democrat. It would only be the anti-Masonic Party, as that is the biggest problem in the United States, is that this is the land of the Freemason and the United States of Israel.
Okay, so we basically got everything out of the way. I think I have nothing else left. This was going to be my outline for tonight's presentation. Opening remark: for centuries, America has been perceived and often proclaimed as a, quote, Christian nation. But tonight, we'll peek back the layers of that belief, focusing on America's true origins and the intentions of its founding fathers, men deeply influenced by Enlightenment thinking, secularism, and individual liberty over religious conformity. So, thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Marcel, Amber, Sting. Who else was in chat today? Heinrich, everybody else. I hope you benefited. I certainly did. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.